How's it going, guys? And welcome to Five Knives. I've got Lucas Burnley here. He's been making knives for over 20 years. You might know him from the Burnley brand. You might know him from the Side Pop. You might know him from the CRKT Squid or a million other things because he's been around and he's done it. And we're gonna take a look at his Five Knives. And because we don't have a name for this thing yet, Lucas came up with an amazing suggestion, which is Burnley's Best Burgers in Bend, because that's where we're at. So we will grab a burger and fries after this. I'll show you where we're gonna be. I don't know if the TJ one worked out perfectly. I'm gonna do a little better this time. But dude, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, this is a blast. This is
I'm having you, but thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Right.
Having.
Thanks for coming by.
Because we are in your shop. This is where some of the magic happens.
Yeah,
which is
we're actually sitting in my grinder room right now.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah. So this is like one thing that I really love about this idea that I've come up with is I love coming to people and seeing like what they've got going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always a blast. And I've never gotten a burger in Bend, so we're gonna do that after.
Done. Okay. Love it.
All right, cool. So I sent you the list of knives, so you already know the story.
I do.
So, dude, let's kick it off. First knife.
First knife.
Or however you want to interpret that. Right?
All right, like just to preface it, and this we were talking about this before. Like, I'm a knife maker and I love knives. When you ask me those questions, it's like there's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I pulled from things that I had immediately available.
Cool.
And that have significance kind of where, but as I'm looking at them, I'm like, my brain's just like exploding with potentiality.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But-
like a lifetime of loving knives, 20 years of making knives, you did a lot of firsts, I'm sure.
And a lot of firsts and
Yeah.
a lot of like important and a lot of like situational, and I have ADHD. So like my brain is like, yeah, like here, okay. So top 50 knives. But I do actually have my first knife,
Great.
which is like the first knife.
Cool. Yeah, let's see it.
Which is this guy right here. It is from the first chunk of 01 tool steel that I ever bought. And like for makers out there, it'll be funny. I actually bought a big bar of steel and started a sword.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And then at some point in that process was like, this is a bad idea. And then I turned it into a knife. And I think originally, this had like just like a cord wrap handle. This is probably the first leather sheath that I ever made, which looks like, it's like kind of frontier-y almost, because it's just like this straight, you're like, I'm gonna hand stitch this piece of leather. I just need a knife to like drop into it and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what you come out with. Right? I love it. I should probably like put like some beads and stuff on it too. But yeah,
get some tassels.
Yeah, it definitely needs
tassels.
It needs fringe.
I love it. Yeah, so, absolutely love it.
But yeah, that's it. So chunk of 01 tool steel. It's lived through a bunch of iterations. As far as like I gave it to Tom Crime's son at one point because I was just like had this box of like old knives. I'm like, here, take this.
Yeah.
Amazing. At some point, he gave them back, and he was like, dude, I don't need these, and like you probably want this at some point.
Yeah.
First knife.
And there we are. Okay, so this is first knife that you made.
That I ever made, yeah.
Okay, and so what time period? What are we looking at? Time
I would think this is probably 2001. So I went through this program called Job Corps.
Okay.
And it's like a government-funded program, kind of low-income trade school.
Okay.
I went through for welding.
Okay, yeah.
Awesome, life-changing, like amazing experience. It was actually the first kind of like structured schooling I'd ever had. When I got out, they give you like a rehabilitation fund. So they give you like a little bit of money.
Cool, yeah.
So I think I was 17 years old and I bought a Bader grinder.
Okay.
I actually bought that Bader grinder right there.
Oh, rad. Okay, yeah.
So with that money,
and
this was the first thing that I made on that machine.
Okay, yeah.
So.
Yeah. And why knives, right? You went through a program for welding. I know you've worked as a machinist as well.
Not as a machinist.
So, or I guess,
we can go into that.
Welder, yeah.
Why knives?
Like, why was it you're like, okay, I'm getting out of this program. I'm gonna buy this like professional grinder, and I'm gonna buy a chunk of O2.
And it's crazy because like at this point, like I was just thinking about the process of actually buying the grinder. So the Albuquerque flea market, there was a knife dealer who was always there, and like at that point, like he always had like the cool cold steel stuff and like super tactical, but like stuff that you weren't just seeing like everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's gonna sound ridiculous. I don't know that I had a computer at this point.
Oh, dude,
but
early 2000s, like, that wasn't normal.
No, right? And I'm like, okay, like I knew about the Baders. because of knife magazines. And I actually went to him and like had him order this machine for me. It was really weird because I didn't know that I could like reach out to bait because I'm a teenager, right? But I'm like piecing it together.
They weren't in the yellow pages,
no,
which is what we use.
I like took him. I'm like, hey, I want to order this thing. Can you get this? Like, since you're like a business,
yeah.
And he did it. It's really, I don't know what the criteria for spending that money on it was, right? Like, I wanted to make knives, and to be honest, like coming back to it, like I understand this more in myself now. I hyper fixate on like the best thing.
Right.
So, and I mean, hobbies, anything. And like sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
In this case, it did.
Yeah.
Did I need that grinder at 17 with the resources that I had? No.
No.
There's no argument.
No, yeah. A bench grinder could have got you.
Bench grinder could have gotten
shape
me
something
there.
out, right?
Yeah, and I say first, like this is the first knife. Like I think when I was a kid, I probably filed something out.
Of course.
There was like little things that I did.
Of course. Yeah,
but this like start to finish, like also heat treating it, also doing like the right things to make a tool.
Yeah.
First. Yeah. So I didn't even have a place to put it.
That's amazing.
So that grinder went with me. Like I think I lived with a girlfriend after I got out of there, had a garage for a little while, worked, then moved into an apartment.
Right.
Didn't have a place to use it.
Yeah.
Then like plugged it in and used it on the deck of the apartment. Then got an apartment with a 1-car garage, put that in the garage. So this is really like a staging process.
Yeah.
But as to your question of like where it came in, basically while I'm in welding school, I'm doing a school to work program.
Right.
Okay, so they send you out. You live in the dorms, but you go out and you work. I ended up working in a place that made titanium body jewelry.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and this is like again early 2000s. American body jewelry industry is like really pretty kicking.
Oh yeah, that's peak. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and this is before import body jewelry came in and basically broke the market.
Got you.
Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
So it was during this time where I'm like starting to work with like small metals, doing welding, seeing like just being interested. And that's for me, the spark of everything is just like getting interested in something and then making something and being like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do it again.
Yeah. And
So,
here you are 20 years later doing it again.
still doing it again. And incidentally, this is really weird. Like novelty is really important to me, but so is structure. And so what I've found, I'm actually entering into some areas of making where my skills are so lacking
Okay.
that it feels like I'm starting over.
Cool. So
And
you're capturing some novelty then.
capturing the novelty and the fear and like the risk with potential upside of reward. And it's super exciting because it's like literally starting over. And I'm sure a lot of people hear that and they're like, I don't want to start over. But for me, like I want to keep being a beginner. I want to keep starting over. I just want them to stack.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to the beginning of when I was a beginner at this.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, there's so much of a stretch in that story that I love, right? Like 17, getting out of this trade program, like not even sure where the grinder's gonna go. Yeah. Buying the grinder that you're still using as a professional knife maker.
Well, and
right?
that's the argument, right?
Yeah.
It's held up. Buy once, cry once. Like it did the thing.
Yep, exactly. So with this knife in particular, so you're going for a sword, right?
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. I took a welding class in high school.
Yeah.
And the teacher did not like me at all. And admittedly, like I never went to school, so I understand why he didn't like me.
Right.
And there were probably rules about not making weapons. I'm sure there were.
Totally.
I didn't know any of those rules. I didn't care.
Yeah.
So my first thing I did in that welding class was get a big thing of stainless whatever.
Yeah.
And I started making a sword. He came over, he's like, what are you making? I was like, oh, it's a sword. He literally just snapped it in half. And I was like, fair. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Fair.
But like also,
And, like,
what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like when we were in school, like I remember making things like flails. You're like, all right, I'm gonna take this piece of chain that was in the scrap bin and I'm gonna build a mace head for it and a handle. And you're like, well, it's actually like pretty cool. But you're also like building a mace.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we also filled a 40-foot section of tube with, acetylene and lit it on fire.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was terrifying. But like, you
Right.
take teenage kids, put them in a trade school with like 1 or 2 instructors.
Yeah.
you're gonna run into
Kids are
swords.
gonna have
Like
fun.
it could be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse.
Could be worse.
I mean, a tube full of acetylene, that could be
Not
worse.
a great idea. Learned.
So, do you remember when you set out to make the sword and then
Yeah.
it landed on the knife? Do you
Yeah.
remember was there any specific? Were you looking at anything specifically, like out of a magazine or anything, or did you have this? Was there a knife out there that you're like, oh, dude, there's this Trezola knife or whatever?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Oh, guaranteed. And
Yeah.
like I came into the industry kind of in the tactical era.
that's like height of tactical.
Yeah, it's
in
like
my
height
opinion,
of tactical
Yeah,
era,
yeah.
and like being, I don't know, like that's where my nerdism kind of went to. Is like around capability, around like fantastical use of a tool. Like what is the peak element of this tool?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think I would have been looking at things like Striders. And I've always loved Japanese craft in general. So it's like, well, clearly I'm going to probably build this like semi-tactical-ish, like Japanese-y inspired thing.
Yeah.
Which didn't work out.
Right.
But yeah, I think, and like I mentioned Cold Steel, it's like, I probably had a Master Tano or something where it was like, it's actually, you look back and you're like, it's a really nicely made knife.
It really is. Yeah.
In a time when what was available also was like a little bit different, and like steels were starting to be hyped in different ways, and you have like you get caught by different areas of the industry.
Yeah,
it still happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Dude, I can't even remember how many different like Bud K or like Ninja order catalogs.
Prime.
You know what I mean? Just
Bud K and the Edge.
Dude, and just looking through them all the time and being like, oh yeah, like obviously I need these shurikens and I need these ninja crawlers because I got to crawl these trees outside.
Yeah, you could possibly need that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you and me were looking at the same thing.
Yep.
Edge catalog, it's like you look and you're like, oh man, like weird things too, and weird things that stuck. I think I'm like always shifted off of center.
Yeah, okay.
In some direction. And so it's like, boy, dendritic cobalt. And you're like, that's just cool because it's different. And what is it? Or looking at like Pat and Wes Crawford, like some weird lock mechanism that they had, and just being like, oh, that's like different than everything else that's out there, and it's interesting. Doesn't make it better, more useful, or not, or less, or anything.
Yeah.
But it was like, those were the little pieces that were slowly kind of like the building blocks, I think.
Well, and it goes right back to what you're saying. There's a form in that it's a knife or a tool, right? But then, finding the novelty inside that form, right? And I'm with you, like, especially when I was younger, I gravitated to that stuff so much. Yeah. And I think for me, it was probably less novelty and more fantasy.
Yeah, it's fantasy.
Yeah, as a kid,
fantasy.
you know what I mean? Where it's like,
fantasy.
well, dude, obviously I got to be able to fight 20 like dragon ninjas,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
I saw Under Siege.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly.
Okay.
Best knife fight scene in movie history.
Dude, seriously.
Under Siege, dude.
Yeah, and still why I love kitchen knives.
Yeah,
Other
nothing
than cooking.
better than like somebody coming at you and you grabbing the kitchen knife they're swinging at you with your teeth.
Yeah.
And then disarming them.
Legit.
Yeah.
Okay. There's entry points into this, and so it's funny because over the years, like I've told this to a lot of people, and there's different responses to it. And it's like really easy to be like, yeah, I'm kind of a nerd and I grew up watching action movies, and action movies informed a lot of my original kind of like feelings and concepts around knives. But that's not actually like the critical point. It's like those are just the sparks.
Exactly.
Because like anything that you learn initially, it's always going to change.
Yep.
Right? And it's going to get refined. But yeah, that's still what I love.
Yeah, like the thing that gets you into like a certain hobby or a world or even just ideas, right? Is probably not the thing you're going to land on, right? Because it's the introductory, right? But I'm with you, especially because it's tied to when I was younger, right? Yeah. I'm with you. Like if I'm in a gas station and I see like a sword at a gas station, dude, there's just something about it where I'm like, I need to buy that. And
It's cool.
I don't need to buy that, but I need to buy that.
Dude, I think that stuff is genetic, and knives are interesting too, as far as tools go.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of tools that if you don't do the trade, aren't interesting.
Yep, 100%.
Like, there's a lot of people that can like just look at a wrench and be like, well, it's a wrench.
Yep.
Knives actually bridge this gap where you can be someone who does not have a day-to-day use for a knife. I know this exists. Okay.
Yeah.
Like everyone needs knives, but like there's in day-to-day society, like you're not hunting, you're not working on a boat, you're not whatever it is where you think of like a knife. You're not a lineman.
Yep.
But a knife can still trigger the same like interest to be like, oh, that's cool. I don't really know why I want it. Why do I need it?
Yeah.
And I've seen this with collectors over the years where they have the thing that they collect.
Yeah.
And then they'll see a piece on the table and it like triggers something. And they're like, I don't know what I need that, but like, and that to me is amazing. And it's fantasy. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. And I think when you say genetic, right? Like, I mean, let's go back to, to Ugga Bugga days or whatever, right? Like, okay, so you got a rock for pounding and these things, but like really like the advent of something sharp to do a job, right? That had to have been, I mean, that's like fire. You know what I mean? Like that is course altering as a species, right? And so I do think there is something like, and I think that's why anybody, right? Like, I mean, my mom grew up like working on the farm and everything. Yeah. So like she worked with tools and stuff. But like my mom, she's 61, 62, however old she is. That's a bad son moment. My mother is 61 on March 5th. I know how old my mom is. My mom is 61 on March 5th. I know my mom. Anyways, but even her, right? Like, because I work in knives, and sometimes she'll see these knives, and she's like, "Oh, can you get me one of those?" And it's my mom. You know what I mean? Like no real use outside of a Swiss Army knife.
But it's like aesthetically pleasing, or there's some other context that's interesting. And that's the thing. Like the question, like, why do you carry a knife? It's like, well, so I can cut things. Why do you carry a flashlight? So I can see in the dark. Yeah. Like there's these obvious statements, but then it goes past that because you're like, well, okay, from a design aesthetic, there's this thing that I connect to, and it could be totally unrelated. It could just be a color, or it could be a shape of a toy that you had when you were a kid. And like in your mom's case, that could be, who knows? It could be a relative. Like, oh, I remember, people will tell me like, oh, I remember my granddad carried this knife. Why is there a huge resurgence of, slip joints? It's like, because a bunch of people are hitting an age where the stuff that your dad's uncles, like family carried is rad. So what do? You like look for that? Why? Okay. Yeah.
It's a talisman, right? Talisman. It's like a portal to a moment in time, or a portal to even just an emotion where you're just like, yes, you know. Yeah.
I watch it with my boys. Like Bo is 7, Winston's 4. Bo is like, he's out here, he's in the shop.
Yeah.
When he started to get interested in knives, for him, he wanted to sit and trace sketches.
Okay.
And what I see, I'm like, oh, that's like that was your intro. I gave him a little Swiss Army knife for Christmas, him and Winston, and I watch, and it's like, they love it. Like they want it. Like Winston this morning was like, where's my Swiss Army knife? And I'm like, okay, here's the deal. If you want to just like hang out with your knife, you can do that at the kitchen table and look at it. You can't lay on the couch and like watch Sunday morning cartoons and hold your Swiss Army knife, because I'm going to come out and there's going to be a huge cut.
You're going to put something in it, exactly.
So the rule is like, okay, you use it when you can carry the knife when we have a reason to use knives.
Okay.
Like, we go for a hike, cool, you carry your knife. Or you want to help mom do something and she's in the kitchen. Like he was cutting up carrots with his little Swiss Army knife. And I'm like, but I see the connection point.
Yep.
I bet you that will stick. They're always going to have an affectionate spot for this little red oval. Yep. Like,
no, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's a perfect way to look at that, like the shift, right? Yeah. Like you've got 2 kids starting, right? Just so you're getting to watch these starting moments, right? I love that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, it's like the seeds of inspiration. And I'm an over planner, so I'm always like trying to do some like weird strategic like thing and be like my kids, like right now, like, I'm like, I want them to learn the trades. I want basically just to be like capable. Yeah. But I also don't want to force them or have it be boring. Yeah. Because if it's boring for me, I won't do it. And so we just play in the shop when we get to play in the shop. Winston gets to like take the power drill and screw, finish screws into a board. Bo gets to come out and build a Harry Potter wand with me. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. As long as they're having fun and they're here, I'm psyched.
Well, and that's the thing is they're engaging with their material world in a way that like that some adults don't even do.
Totally.
Right? And like, there are very few things in my life where I'm like, I really think this is important that everybody or almost everybody should be doing this thing. And being able to engage in the material world is one of those things, right? Like, I think it's really important. Like, you should know how a socket works, right? Like in your house, you should know how a socket works, right? Like, you should know how to change the fuses in your car, right? Like I think there are just certain skills where it's like, and then, because the thing is like you said, it doesn't matter. Like, how many times, like, if you're a normal person, how many times are you going to rewire a socket? Not often, right? If like maybe one every 5 years, maybe, right? But you now have like this skill set. You have this kernel in your brain of how something works and how something goes together, and your brain will draw connections to all those things, right?
Well, but your brain and my brain, and my neurodivergent brain. Okay, I won't comment on you, but
I'm sure I've got a touch of the ADHD.
Okay, not gonna comment, but it does link, right? So like we know that, and you're like, okay, maybe that's not true for everybody, but like skills still stack no matter how you look at it.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It like, again, for almost everybody, those skills will stack, you know, and I think it's really important.
Like, if you can change a bike tire, if you have never changed a car tire, you can probably figure it out.
Yeah.
You understand like the basic concept. I need to remove this thing. How do I do that? Well, okay, there's like this. Okay. It's like, just you build. I like that idea. I get it. Not everybody needs to know how to do everything.
No. Of course
I have not convinced myself of that yet.
Well, we were talking about before we started, right? My mantra the last while has been, I can do anything, right? But I can't do everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great. Works for money too.
It works for everything. Yeah, I've found it such a handy way for me to be like, yeah, sure, like I could go off and learn how to do this thing, right? Like I haven't met something I haven't learned how to do yet, right? But do I like? Does it matter? Like, actually, what's the reason? You know?
It's funny. Like, to me, there's an area where that feels like success to me. Like, if I can follow interest and not have it affect like the well-being of my family, I think I will have. I think I'll feel like, oh, I've like made this. I've done it.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
It doesn't have to be monetized or efficient. Anything. Just interesting.
Because you'll have the time and space to chase your interest without worrying about like, okay, but like, how do I pay the mortgage, or is there enough money for the bills or whatever?
Yeah, in like whatever version, that's like my version of like financially independent is time independent.
I love that.
And like, there's different ways to achieve that.
Yeah.
But it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it does sound pretty cool. Awesome. All right, well, speaking of cool, and we touched on Bud K a little bit earlier.
Totally.
Our next category is Apocalypse Knife.
Okay. Oh, that's fun.
And this is like one of my favorite categories in this chat, because there's so much to unpack with Apocalypse Knives.
Totally.
Or sometimes there's not, right? So what did you choose for yours?
So I actually, this is fun because it actually ties into our like the last portion of the conversation.
Yeah.
This is one of those knives that I saw, and it triggered all of the super knifey responses in me.
Yeah. Dude, as soon as you pull it out, I'm feeling it too.
Feeling it too.
The second you pull that out, I was like, oh, that's real cool.
It's like it's got all the things. And basically, like, this is a big forged, I would say, like, on the lightweight side, like Chopper by Nick Rossi.
Okay. Yeah. It looks fairly thin. If we're talking lightweight for how big it is.
Yeah.
Right?
This is for me is something that really ties into the what is knifey. So I like big knives that feel really fast.
Okay. Ooh, I like this feels really fast.
Yeah, because you can because a big knife is big doesn't mean that it's like a chunk of steel that is slow, right? And this comes like my early life. Like, I love martial arts. I did a lot of combative stuff. I did like Kali and all these different, like, I'm a mutt. Same thing. Interest, I like pick and pull and play around and do stuff. And during that, I really got this kind of like love of things that moved a certain way. Okay. We can put that into like maybe the fantasy side a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, balance is balance. This is like an obvious statement. But if you think about like a kitchen knife, or if you think about something like that works as a tool, a big knife can do the work of a little knife. Yeah. It's not always
it doesn't go the other way.
Doesn't go the other way. But for a big knife to do the work of little knives, certain things, like, I could very easily use this in the kitchen because it's thin. like you can skin with it. Like I did actually bone out a turkey with it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
just for fun.
Yeah.
And I was doing I was in a hunting school. It was really, really cool up in Washington called Human Nature Hunting, and it's basically a course on ethical hunting.
Cool.
It's really fun.
I love that.
And
Yeah,
I didn't grow up in a hunting family,
Yeah.
so same thing. So for me to learn, I like to learn. I try to do one major kind of group a year.
Okay, cool.
So I went
love
to this
that.
hunting school, and the people that were also taking the class, like nobody was, like they weren't knife people.
Yeah.
And so just for fun, we were like, everybody was pulling out knives to like use, and I let a guy use this, and he was like, "Oh, that's really fun." Like,
Yeah.
but also you saw, you're like, like we're like, meeting out a wing so that I can like mount it, like big knife. At the same time, on the practical side, I love machetes.
Yeah.
I love machetes because they're a tool for work. Okay. But it's the same thing. It's a multi-purpose tool.
And that's the thing is I'm hoping to get Joe Flowers and talk to him, do one of these with him, right?
Yeah.
And I so badly want to go down with him on one of his trips down to South America because machetes in that area of the world, they're multi-tools.
That is the multi-tool.
It's insane what they can do with those things. You know what I mean? And I want to go and I want to learn so much because like growing up in the Western United States, right? And just Western mythology, it's like all I need's an axe.
Yeah.
And it's actually axes kind of suck for most things.
Yeah.
That like as a kid you think you need an axe for.
Yeah, but we
It's
all
like,
read Hatchet.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, dude, Hatchet. You guys want a good book rec? Go read Hatchet. It's a masterpiece. You want to talk about fantasy?
Yeah, fantasy.
But also
all I wanted was a hatchet and a Henry, like whatever the survival 22 rifle was. I was fully sure that I could survive.
on whatever. Yeah.
Ooh,
Hatchet
I still want one.
Oh, dude, seriously. Hatchet is
I'm gonna
stellar.
buy one.
You need to buy one.
I'm gonna
You need
buy
to
one.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Dude, once you get your hatchet and your
The hatchet
survival
part I
rifle-
have like multiples of.
Yeah.
I don't have the floating 22
Yes.
breakdown rifle.
Yes. I love it.
yeah.
But yeah, because of these things, right? Yeah. Like we grew up like, axe is all you need, but when in reality, it wasn't until, it was probably like 5-6 years ago, I had a conversation with Joe Flowers and he was telling me about machetes and I was like, oh, like let me put that to use. And I was like, dude, this is so much more useful. You know what I mean?
Totally. And
so
like,
the concept of a machete, right?
Granted, like in general, maybe in jungle environments, a machete is slightly more practical than it would be outside of. I grew up going down to Mexico and Guatemala with my family in a bus, basically.
Cool.
My dad always had machetes.
Yeah.
And the people that we hung out with always had machetes.
Yeah.
I use machetes like most people would use a hatchet. So like, oh, you're gonna go make a fire? Cool, I'm gonna use my machete to split kindling. The hack that my dad had was he always had a short machete, like a beaver tail.
Okay.
Like a 12-inch machete.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, with a big round tip.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can use it as a spatula, you can use it to split wood, you can use it to clear vines, brush, a weapon, a woodworking tool. So like when you think multi-purpose, it's like, to me, that is an apocalypse tool.
Yeah.
So we're back to this. It's not a machete.
Dude, it's getting there. You know what I mean? Like the weight of it, the
Here, just put it in your hand.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's way lighter
That's
than
what
I
it
thought it
should
was
do.
going to be.
That's what it should do.
Yeah. And then that's the thing is like, right, like the machete pinch grip, right?
Yeah.
You can pinch grip that thing.
You can pinch it. It's got a nice bird's beak.
Yeah.
It's got, but like you look at it, it's thick enough to be super, super durable.
Yep.
It's probably 5/32 of an inch thick.
Yep.
But
Even
it's
up
got
to
a
the
tapered tang.
Yeah, even up to the tip. It's
tip.
not so thin that you'd be like, ooh, it's delicate.
Yeah, it's not a pry bar.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
It's a knife.
Yeah.
But like, there's a few makers that really embody this for me. So like, if you're ever at Blade Show or something and you see Jason Knight walking around with a big knife, it's in your best interest to just check it out because you do the same thing. It's like he's going to hand it to you and you're going to be like, wait, what? Like that doesn't make any sense.
That's honestly at least like a quarter lighter than I thought it was going to be.
Totally.
Minimum, you know what I mean?
This, like when you think about like bladesmithing versus stock removal, like there's all these arguments around it, but like basically it can all be done anyway. Like a bladesmith can build a big pry bar chunk too, but because of the way that they're working, I think a lot of times it's natural to like, they're feeling it the whole time they're building it. And so they know what they want out of it. All it is it's like, it's a big chunk of steel that has distal taper and it makes it, this feels like something if someone was working with a knife in a culture that worked with knives, this is probably closer to what it's going to feel like.
No, I agree.
Versus a fantasy of like a big tactical where you're like 1/4 of an inch thick.
Yeah.
You know, chisel point, like this is the thing, and you pick this up and you're like, no, that's not the thing.
Yeah, you're like, that's the thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah. No, dude, I love that. Well, and the other thing that I love is with the fin, and it's like got a little bit of the buoy shape.
Yeah.
It also feels very like Western or very American in a way.
Yeah.
Because like you look at a machete and you're like, yeah, it's a machete, right? Like because I didn't grow up around it, I don't get as excited about a machete,
Right.
except for like how they use it, right?
Right.
But that it's like, oh, that's a machete, but like that's a machete that like Davy Crockett would use. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah,
thing,
it's
right?
really,
Like,
it is really well, and that's from the design standpoint. That's like those visual cues where it doesn't affect necessarily the application. It just affects how you feel about it.
Yeah.
And goes back to the talisman thing. Where you're like, you don't need, like as a knife maker, I'm like not making anything that someone needs to buy from me. It's not about that. I'm making something that somebody might like, and that matters. And it's like this. It's like I picked it up and I was like, I like that.
Yeah.
And I bought it. And this is my truck knife. So like I just carry it and I'm like, do I need this in my truck? No. But I like it. And when I do this with it,
Yeah, there's something really gratifying about it.
As a knife maker, like there's all these tropes, but it's like there's certain knives where you put them on the table and it's like, you know that it's a matter of time before someone picks it up and is like,
Yeah, exactly.
this is not that knife, but
But
I have a similar.
It has some of that though.
I have a similar response to it. So that's this or a machete.
Love it. Dude, I think that's a stellar apocalypse knife choice. Now, if a side question to just the idea of apocalypse, right? Because there's versions, right? There's all these fun, fantastical versions. If you had to land in, and I'm gonna put you on the spot here, so just do what you can. If you had to land in one of these fictional apocalypses, let's say like out of a movie or whatever, something you can think of, which one would you want to be in? Like if you had to be stuck in one, which one would you choose? You got like zombies, nuclear apocalypse, whatever, right? Like,
dude, it's a hard one. I almost feel like the most comfortable would be some weird future version, like almost like a Terminator, something sci-fi-esque.
Okay, yeah. So you're like the sci-fi route is the way.
And there's a reason for this, is because it's the least disturbing to my brain.
Okay. Yeah.
So if we go back, like what's the most realistic is probably like that concept of like the 1 second after like EMP takes out the world and we're all basically back to the 1800s or something.
Well, I was talking to TJ and it's like, okay, cool. If that's the case, how do you grow food? Who knows how to grow food?
Who knows how to grow food? And that's like, I look at it, I'm like, that's like a big scary one.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you've read like Cormac McCarthy or anything, or like read The Road, like, dude, that's where like, I think being a kid and maybe watching Mad Max. Okay. Super freaky.
Yeah.
I'm not super into like being chased down by like a motorcycle gang.
a motorcycle game of cannibals.
Yeah. So like those are really disturbing. Like I'd rather almost be like Alien or like robots.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it matters. It's almost like a hedonic treadmill kind of thing, or like the concept that like in general you're going to be happy within a range.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I feel like probably disaster would be similar. Like at the point where it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah.
The second part of that question, I guess, could be like, where do I feel like I would thrive?
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I think that would be. I think I'd be happiest if I was just left alone.
Right.
So like preferred version.
Yeah.
Like, it's just quiet.
Yeah.
And maybe not too many people, but they're not cannibals. I just don't ever see them.
Yeah, fair.
That's a good one.
Similar. There's one of the characters one of my favorite apocalypse movie characters in that type of sort of scenario is the Postman. Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah,
dude. I don't know what it is. Like I just and he like travels around with his donkey, right, or his mule or whatever, and he like performs Shakespeare because I think he was like some sort of like he was like a college teacher or something before the apocalypse happened.
Yeah.
And like he ends up getting wrapped up in it, of course, right?
Yeah.
And then they like reestablish things or whatever.
Yeah.
But like at the beginning where it's just him and his mule, And it's like he only goes into town when he needs to. He trades them for like a creative service.
Right.
And they give him food and then he leaves.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, I like that.
Like, that's pretty good.
Like,
And then you tie in family.
Yeah.
And like, so the like, I guess like in the fantasy side, like it's like the glorious death thing is almost like, what is the best death? It's like, well, I don't want to like fade away. Okay. I don't want to get like, I just want to get sick and die. I'm like, okay. So I basically want to be on a family adventure with like my family and extended family.
Right.
Okay. And then I want, if something tragic happens, I basically like, I want to be able to save my family from the bear while killing the bear, but also dying. Okay?
Yeah. Dude,
that's sick, dude.
Yeah.
I'm good. That to me, like, I'm out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody, like, they live, I'm gone, I'm fine with it.
Right. And you did your job.
And I did my job. That to me, that would be like, that's like peak performance.
I love it. It's amazing. So I was thinking about this fictional thing, and then we'll move on to the next knife. But another, again, fictional, so movies, right?
Yeah.
Another movie, you ever see Reign of Fire?
Yeah.
If I could survive it, like, right? Because like the reality is in any of these movies, we're probably like, it's luck if you survive, right?
It's luck if you survive life.
Yeah, exactly, right. But like Reign of Fire is like the cool, like for me, I'm like, oh, the world's in an apocalypse because dragons are real.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to live in that one.
That's what I mean. But there's actually a buffer there because I think you realize you're like, there's novelty.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, so that's what I'm saying. Like
Back
aliens,
novelty,
dude. Like aliens.
Yeah.
Different than just like things are now bad.
Yeah.
Right. At least there's dragons.
Yeah.
Or aliens. Like something cool.
There's this exterior force that has made the world what it is.
Yeah.
We didn't do it to ourselves.
Yeah, I'd like us just to not self-destruct. I think about it from the community standpoint a lot. Or like video games are another one where you're like Fallout. It's like you play Fallout and you're like, oh, if you have community, right? And it just all it is at a point I think is going back generationally, and then it's like, how far back do you go?
Yeah.
Are you in like warring tribes? Right. Are you in a town, a fort? And there's variations on that. Like we were just talking about a new show that just came out called American Primeval. Dude, I don't really want to get dropped into that.
Right.
I really don't. And that's historically based.
Yeah. And you're like, nope, not where I want to be.
I'll take dragons.
Fair. Yeah, dragons.
Dragons are sick.
So
and there's the potential that you could like tame them, dude.
Oh, dude, like so much with dragons, right? Okay. So next topic would actually probably be useful in an apocalypse scenario, and that's multi-tools.
Yeah.
Now you actually were like gathering these up while I was setting everything up, and I was like, I don't want to see them because I want to come in raw, right?
Yeah.
But this was one you were kind of hung up on, so I'm interested to where you landed. At least you were hung up.
Yeah.
Initially,
No,
right?
I did. I really well, and this is because you hear the term, and the term conjures an image.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is like, okay, if you think about a multi-tool, right? It's in the words. It's a tool that serves multiple functions.
Yep.
Okay. A lot of that is based on what your day-to-day activities are.
Yep, 100%.
Okay? But this is another one where there is a spectrum for me. Okay. Day to day. Yesterday, I was like up at the mountain with my kids skiing. Okay. So what is my day? I was like, well, I got traction boards, and I've got my compressor, and I've got a snow shovel, and I've got food and a heater and blankets. And okay, to me, I'm like, that's everyday carry when I'm doing this activity.
Yep.
Okay. And I looked around and I was like, well, I do have multi-tools, right? And like the easy thing to say is like, well, when I was a kid, I really liked the Gerber that came out the front.
Dude. I can't tell you how many times my mom yelled at me snapping that thing.
Snap. And it's actually like one of the first like fidget tools in a way.
Yep.
Really clean design. And like, of course, like Leatherman for multiple reasons, but like one, just because of like on the craft side, like how that engineering, bootstrapping, making the thing work, being told it wouldn't work, like all of those.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But I brought it back to myself and I'm like, what do I actually carry as a multi-tool? And I realized it's like, it's pieces.
Okay.
So it is an everyday carry, but it's like, to me, that's like the things that are always with me.
Yeah.
So basically like I carry this.
Yep.
And all it is a pen, a leather cover, and 2 notebooks. And I use, basically, I love field notes.
Yeah.
And I use the front one as a journal.
Okay.
That is archived. And I use the back one as disposable information.
Love it.
but it's also design. And so I've got like my tactile turn pen, and I've got like my old school Scout leather, like, you know, notebook cover that Joey made me like a decade ago.
Yeah.
And this for me is the same thing. It's a talisman. It's like my ideas. And like I use Trello and like Todoist and all these different things, but I put everything in paper first. Yep. Okay, first component. Second is just, I went to knife, and what I realized is like, the only thing that I really carry that's non-knife is like my keys and like a tiny pry bar.
Okay.
All right. I think this is the only thing that I have maybe that I made other than that first knife. But just a little titanium pry bar, and I use it for like scraping. Sometimes I'll grab it and like use it instead of a knife for opening boxes.
Okay.
I'd say like ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But it's also not, it's like, is it a tool? Yeah. But it's also just like a flat key that can scrape things.
Dude, for me, like when I think about tools that I would carry regularly, or that I do carry regularly, right? For me, it's pry, ply, drive.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, like
you can use it as a screwdriver.
Those are the things that I like. So the fact that like that's drive and pry, and it's like this, you know, and it's on your keys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you made it, which is cool.
And it's weird.
You know?
It's weird. This one has a bottle opener on it, and I don't actually. I make some bottle openers. I made one of these without a bottle opener specifically for myself.
Yeah.
And as a product, it doesn't sell nearly as well.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's because of the perceived use.
Yeah.
Oh, I can use this as a pry in a little thing, and I can open bottles. Yep. It's like, but I don't ever open bottles with it. It's just there.
Yeah.
And I put a ruby in mine because I'm bougie.
Oh,
and
cool.
I could.
Love it.
And again, this stuff it makes me happy. Like I've got like my good art, like key dangler, and same thing. Like, do you need it? No. Do you like it? Yes. And then the last one would be like, I carry, like, I go through knives.
Yeah.
I've got one of my knives that I carry pretty regularly, and then I've got this old Sebenza.
Yeah.
And like when you look, it's kind of like all tracks.
Yep.
Like that looks like some.
I mean, you put the right lighting on that. That's an Instagram photo, right?
Yeah,
there. You know
exactly.
I mean?
And it's like unintentionally, and like this is like all of it is used and scratched up, and like, can I make it day to day without this? Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question, because your question was specifically favorite multi-tool.
Well, actually, I think what you've shown me is, I mean, like the knife's a multi-tool, and we're talking about knives.
Yeah.
But like, I actually really love the idea of a journal.
Yeah.
As a multi-tool, like as an EDC
For
journal.
me, it is.
As a multi-tool, because same. It's exactly
Right?
like, dude. I mean, right? Yeah.
Like,
you know what I mean?
And guaranteed, you have a system, because I can see you have multiple. You don't have a book.
Yeah. No. Like, okay. So right, general journal. Right. This is for sketching, and this is my disposable, basically. Right. And then this is calendar. Right. That's my system. Yep. You know what I mean? And I'm actually like tuning it. So this isn't my normal carry, but as far as the moleskin goes, dude, I've carried a moleskin for like 12 years straight. Yeah. Like or field notes.
Yeah, field notes, moleskin.
Yeah.
Basically, I like field notes. I'm a design nerd, so like Aaron Draplin stuff is amazing to me.
He's
and like,
an amazing guy.
I like that you can take them and archive them in a little box. Yeah. And so for me, if I'm sketching in this, they go in the journal. Yeah. Right. Everything else, and then anything, because I need things to be trackable. If I'm doing scheduling stuff, it goes online. Yeah. But I still write it in the disposable. And what I do is I basically keep, if there's something I need to do that I haven't done and I'm on a new page, I'll just write it again. Yeah. Because I then get the dopamine of when I do it, going back through 6 pages and being like crossed off, crossed off, crossed off, crossed off. Yep, exactly. So, dude, no, you are the first person, and then obviously you have the pry bar multi-tool, which is great. Do you find that you use that pry bar? Is it fairly regular? Yeah, fairly always. Yeah. Well, and it's also something that I'll hand to other people. Yeah. Because like it's like just a thing like it's got a sharp edge. Like there's tape on a box. And like, zip. Yeah. Or like instead of handing them your Sebenza, which one it's your Sebenza, but also two, it's a really sharp knife. Yeah, it's a sharp, and not everybody knows how to use it. Or like putting like. There's a lot of little screws around, and like, this thing gets chewed up, and I'll stick the corner and do a Phillips or So absolutely, I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's like about as much as I ever have, except for if I've got like a bag and we're doing an activity. Right. Like a very you'll load up specifics around a specific activity. Yeah. Which I totally get. But my whole life, that's the thing, man. Like I have so many hobbies. There's no way that I can say, oh, here's what I carry. Yeah. It would be ridiculous. Yeah. This is, I read you a comment right before we started that was from a like EDC pouch video I had. And the guy's basically like, oh, you're a loser. You don't use any of this stuff.
It's just funny. Like that's
Yeah.
YouTube, right? Like it is
It's
what
perceptions,
it is.
yeah.
I've got a thick skin about it. But to that point, that's why I always say like carry what you need,
Yeah.
need what you carry, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're doing, right? Like
Yeah.
you're
Well,
like,
and it's those comments are always interesting to me because to like presume that you know what someone else needs and how they use equipment is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's missing the point. Dude, some of us might just like having equipment and gear.
exactly.
And there's a lot of different reasons to do that. Do you need it to be a human? No.
No.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
But you can't explain the point to someone who doesn't get the point on the interwebs.
Exactly.
And like expect that to track. So like you're right. Yes.
Yeah. I like I use my stuff enough that it's all beat up and it's all whatever. And it's like very like I carry a lot because of the way I live.
Yeah.
But also I use basically all that stuff
Yeah.
pretty often. But like, have you ever you work with CRKT? Do you know is her name Rue what is her name on Instagram? I just spaced her name. I didn't prepare for this beforehand, so I apologize for.
So
forgetting
you're talking about Rochelle.
Rochelle, there it is. Yes,
Okay.
Rochelle.
Didn't know if it's
and
the
then,
same on
yeah,
Instagram.
and then Rue is her Instagram. I was trying to
Okay.
remember. Anyways, so dude, Rochelle, right?
She's great.
She is amazing.
She's amazing.
and she carries so much
Yeah.
stuff. And like she's like she does not use it at all, and she'll say that,
but she loves it.
She loves it, right?
That's good enough.
It's
so
good
this
enough.
is the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, which is the concept of utility.
Yeah.
An application, right? So if your utility of an item is based in how it makes you feel, there's utility. If it's aesthetically pleasing, or if it's material that you like to like have, or like you like the weight, like there's so many reasons. You can't expect everyone to understand it, and it's not worth explaining to everyone.
Yep.
But in our side, that plays a huge part. There are a lot of people that carry a lot of things that do not have day-to-day application. Also, multi-tool, without a doubt, I put it in the other room, but it's our phone.
Oh yeah.
There is no, I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
in the majority of the world, that is, the fact that it's called a phone bothers me.
Because it's a pocket computer.
Because it's a pocket, and I want it to be cooler, and I actually do want to wear it,
I love it.
okay? Because it's sick.
You're going for the Neuralink then.
Dude, I mean, here's the thing. I got LASIK years
Okay,
ago,
yeah.
and what I realized is, for as crunchy, like hippie kind of unschooled as I grew up.
Well, and because I want to make a note, when you said
Yeah.
earlier about going down south
Yeah.
in a bus,
Yeah.
you meant like a Volkswagen bus, right?
No, I mean
it was a school bus.
Oh, it was a school.
'Cause
Well,
I knew it
so
was-
here, not a school bus. We had a few different rigs.
Yeah.
But my dad liked Gerstenlager bookmobiles.
Oh, dude, going real deep.
Real
Okay,
deep. So because
okay,
he
yeah.
liked the tall ceilings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, that was the deal. So we've had a lot of our mirrors knocked off on tiny mountain roads.
Yeah, exactly. Such a wild.
But point being,
Yeah.
like growing up with without like vaccines and stuff, and like not eating processed foods, I'm like really medically not very scared. And I think it's the novelty. So
Yeah.
I was like, laser eyes? Yeah, I do want them.
In fact, I do want laser eyes.
Because they're like, well, okay. Then they gave me like options, and I'm like, I want this. Like, they're like, here's the one that we give to like law enforcement and military. And I'm like, I do want the impact laser eyes. Like, why would I not want that? Who's gonna say no?
Right.
And it works great, and I have like better than 20/20 vision.
That's amazing.
So Neuralink,
yeah.
I'm actually like, doesn't freak me out. Dude,
My only question.
cell
with
phone is terrifying.
My only question with Neuralink is it upgradable?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get stuck with version 1.
Yeah,
No,
you
and
don't
actually,
know.
for me, Neuralink's not for me. But like that's the
but
joke, right?
And I
Is
don't
it
know. I
upgradable,
don't
right?
know that I would necessarily do it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be opposed to it. Yeah. Like, again, I carry a cell phone.
Yeah.
And we all have like a love-hate with it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing.
No, I agree, and I agree with you. Like back to the initial point, like your phone. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? Like even me, like I'm in engines all the time. I'm building cabinets. I'm in my spare time, right? I'm on the road a lot, like doing whatever.
We're using it for business.
Yeah. Trying to help people out, whatever it is. But like still at the end of the day, my most like touched tool in a day is my phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which
like,
arguably is why the iPhone, one of the reasons it's done so well is because of the aesthetics. Like,
oh yeah.
They made it beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
it made it something people wanted to touch. They wanted
from
to
unboxing.
Yep.
from unboxing on, it feels like something that is quality.
Yeah, if you've ever been a person who's bought a Mac product, right? Like,
so good.
How many of those boxes have you kept for no specific reason?
Yeah.
I know people that have literally like five either iPhone or MacBook boxes, and they don't get rid of them because the quality of the thing is like, you feel like I shouldn't throw it away, but there's no other use for it.
Yeah.
You know, like.
I know, man. There's a lot there.
Did I nail it there?
Yeah, really. I force myself to get rid of them because I know that I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
And then there's like the guilt around like waste and like.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's a loaded.
But even the fact that you said you forced yourself to get rid of it.
Oh yeah, because it's
like,
nice. It's nice enough that I don't want to just get rid of them. Like, oh, that's like cool.
Yeah, it's got weight to it. Like,
yeah.
Yep.
Sign of reliability.
Exactly.
That's funny, man.
That's amazing.
That was a digression. Where were we?
Multi-tools, man. So not even digression at all.
Yeah.
Right into it. Right into the and I agree with you. I think that again, if we're being honest with ourselves, our phones are one of our most used tools. I'm actually working on a video right now about turning your phone back into a tool. Right.
I love that
because we've talked before. Like I've only had a phone for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And like until 5 years, maybe 6 now.
Yeah.
Until 6 years ago, I never owned a cell phone.
Yeah.
Never.
You and I are similar, and I don't think it's because we're like Luddites or anything.
No.
Like I didn't have a cell phone until I was well into my 20s.
Yeah.
And that was like a Nokia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It all progressed. And then it's like you hit the vortex and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
So to your concept of turning it back into a tool, I am getting ready to basically split my phone usage and just buy a second iPhone.
Okay.
And this was a recommendation from Tom Medovich, who is Notorious EDC, who's like super.
Dude,
super,
I love Tom.
He's great, right? Like super
guy.
genuine human. One of my favorite people in the industry. Like just really smart. And he was like, dude, you just need one phone for photography and like social media, and then it's like it lets you take your other phone back. And I was like, actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I like that. So what I actually done is because what I really want is a dumb phone.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact of the matter is the way that our world works.
Yeah.
Right. And so many things that I do, I just found that it was such a stumbling block to getting a lot of things done.
Yeah.
So I say it all the time, but like I think the best dumb phone is a smartwatch.
Yeah.
Like this is my second phone, right?
Yeah.
Like so it's like okay, like I need to be available, or like I want to be able to have maps, or I want to like whatever it is, right? Whatever the thing is that I'm like, I might need this, right? It's like okay, I have a dumb phone now that has a little more than dumb phone capabilities,
right?
know?
But also is like would be handy if there were dragons. For a while.
Exactly. For a while.
So okay, let me ask you this because this is Maddie has been pitching me on. She's like, you just should get a smart watch. And I'm like, I'm resistant to it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
One, I wear watches and jewelry when I'm outside of the shop.
Right.
Okay.
Because in the shop,
can't really do it.
Yeah. I got a Milwaukee pack out that I work out of for a lot of my mechanical work. Yeah. The second I start work, boop, drop it in. Right. Any watch.
But
right?
it's still there. The biggest issue for me with my phone is the availability of information.
Yeah.
It's just a portal. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So if I have the thought, if I'm watching a movie and I'm like, oh, who's that actor? I'm like, dude. I lose 20 minutes.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the beauty with this is I can't. No.
Okay.
There is an internet.
But it's not as easy.
Oh, it's crap.
It's not sticky.
It sucks. It's like unless I really need the information, I'm not going to do it.
But that's acceptable. You know? So what are like top 3 uses?
Top 3.
Other than time.
Yeah. So outside, because I do like having a watch for time, right? So top 3 uses are in order would be call, text, weather.
Call, text, weather.
And honestly, dude, that's about all I do. Now, when I'm traveling like on the road right now, I like to go running in the mornings. So the other thing that's actually kind of nice about this is because I don't know the areas, right? So I don't use it for maps because I don't like using digital maps too much because then I feel like I don't know where I'm at anywhere. But what I do use it for is like, I want to go on a 3-mile run. Right. So I can just put 3-mile run in and then I go running, right? And then it's like, it beeps at 1.5 miles. I turn around and I run back. Yeah. It's a silly thing.
No, that's
to
me that's not.
You know what I mean?
To me, it's not like those are the applications that I like that are like value adds. For me, like I think about it like with Maddie. I feel great when Maddie has her watch on if she runs because I'm like, cool, you got an emergency locator. Yeah. And you got like a red button basically. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, so it's like those things. Same for kids where it's like maybe kids too young for a phone, but you got a way to call me in an emergency. Yeah. I like that.
Well, and that's the other thing is what I'm going to say right now is going to be controversial when it comes to phones, right? But I actually think that if we could get, even if it was in phone-based, where the internet sucked on it, there's no social media at all on it, right? The only thing is, it'd be nice if this had a camera. That's the only thing I miss when I walk away from my cell phone is my camera. But like,
can you take audio recordings?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's helpful.
Yeah,
that's
and you can take audio notes. Like you can literally just do audio notes.
So those are the things. You're right. A camera.
Yeah. The only thing this is missing, in my opinion, that and the controversial take I'm going to have is like, and this is so funny because, okay, let me say it first. I don't think that anybody outside of somebody who owns a business needs to have a smartphone. I don't.
That's a really hard one.
If you're not, because here's the thing is like, we can talk about Facebook, we can talk about TikTok, we can talk about any of these things. Yeah. They're just TV now.
Right.
You're not connecting with your friends, not really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if they know you well enough, like I don't see DMs ever as somebody who has like a brand on Instagram.
Yeah,
they get buried and they get shy. They do what they do with them. So like at the end of the day, like we're no longer connecting with. Not really. We're not really connecting with people via social media in our personal lives, right? But like as business owners, right? It's very useful. But then if we don't have people on social media who are also not doing business, then there's nobody to talk to. But also, as a human, I don't think anybody needs social media.
Yeah.
At this point in social media is what I'm saying. Right?
Super controversial.
Yeah, super controversial.
I know for me personally, like, if it wasn't for business, I wouldn't be on social media.
Yeah, same.
And that is another one of those things that I've always, I would say probably 5-6 years ago, realizing this thing of like, I could measure one metric of success by not needing to interact on social media myself for my business.
I've never had a personal social media account in my life, and I never will.
Yeah,
I never will. Like if I know you well enough, we know each other. We have phone numbers, right?
Yeah.
Or some way to contact each other, right? But like other than that, like, and again, because by the time I got a phone, social media was already kind of broken. Like the chronological time,
you got it late.
I got it late enough where social media was already broken for me. I was like, oh, like I'm not seeing the people I follow anyways, and now it's even worse, right?
Right.
Like, so
and it's like, and again, it's life. Like I still see value. Like I see there's people that I don't talk to all the time, and it's still cool to see like pictures of their family or something. Like it's all the other stuff that makes it complex. Generationally, it's interesting though, because I have friends that I went to high school with that actually just never got on social media.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's because they're a type that wouldn't. I just think they missed it.
Yep.
And then we're like,
Yep.
And I notice it because like there's an absence. And you're like, that's crazy. I wonder with my kids' ages, if by the time they're old enough where it's relevant, 16 or so, like if it's gone or if it's changed again.
It might still be called social media because sometimes we like leave these placeholder names.
Yeah.
But even now, social media is not that social.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just not.
Wait, here's a question. Between smart glasses and a smartwatch.
Smartwatch.
And no.
Oh, yeah.
As a system.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you're saying,
that is basically. Is there a lot of overlap? This is not a tech conversation. But again, you talked about it, and I'm
talking
like,
about multi-tools.
I'm like, okay, so if you're like wearing like smart glass and have a watch, you now have a camera and recording ability.
But my problem with smart glasses is the first off, the way that, because a lot of smart glasses are made to also have audio to your ears.
The Ray-Bans, only the Ray-Bans.
Yeah, the way that you're able to like lock off. I don't like that. I don't like that. For me, this is just me, right?
Yep.
And then the other thing with smart glasses is I don't want a heads-up display to interact with the world. I don't want to be a cyborg, personally. I don't want to be a cyborg. If I choose to enhance myself with an external drive, which would be the internet, right?
Yeah.
Breadth and depth of human history, right? If I choose to want to enhance, I want the choice to enhance myself. Yeah. I don't want to be forced to enhance myself.
Yeah, don't want to be forced. You know I love the idea of a heads-up display.
Yeah, no, not me. Can't do it.
I played enough Halo, but sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like you go sci-fi, and you're like, dude, I do want information that nobody else can see constantly. Yep. If not constantly, I don't want an ad.
Yeah, well, and that's the other big reality is I think that Facebook and even Instagram, in their inception, were actually awesome. Yeah. From like, you look at the history of it, right? Yeah. Again, I wasn't engaging on it, right? But like, they actually were amazing. But the problem is you got to make money on them.
Right.
Right? And so that's the thing with heads-up display. You're never going to get Tony Stark's Jarvis. Never.
Right.
Because Jarvis didn't have to make money.
Right.
Tony Stark didn't even make money off Jarvis.
Right.
And that's the other wrinkle in our smartphones and the watch is actually pretty clean as far as that
Watch
goes.
is pretty clean.
But like with heads-up display and all that, you're going to get ads.
Yeah.
There's no way.
At some point.
And eventually,
or you're gonna
they'll probably figure that out for the watches too.
You're going to misuse the technology to where you're getting ads default because you have a way that you can like do maybe a little more like scrolling or something. And that's
And then the other side of that coin is there's this theory that I've always talked to every time we talk is I have this theory that I've worked on for a while and I actually want to publish it, and it's the intersection of efficiency and humanity, right? And there are these moments, right, like medicine, right? Like the efficiency of our medicine is not so high that it's removing the humanity, right? Like if we can get rid of cancer and AIDS and all these, cool, you know what I mean? That's great. But like maybe transportation. Right? I love driving, right?
Yeah.
But maybe, right, being able to be in one place and then 5 hours later being able to be somewhere where it took my ancestors forever to get week or 2 weeks, right? Like maybe that's enough. So maybe planes are too fast, right?
Sure.
And the efficiency of a plane is and this is a very basic,
no,
is removing.
I'm sure people are going to love it in the comments.
When it comes to technology, right? We have flown. Dude, we've flown to the sun and like our wax wings are melting because we are just stripping what it is to be human in us.
Sure.
Our ability to critically think, our ability to creatively think, our be able to even create things with ChatGPT, right? Because ChatGPT
and like empathetically think.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the efficiency of our ability to communicate with each other has, again, our wax wings are melting, dude. We've went too far, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're actually like removing what it is to be human.
Yeah.
In my opinion. We're lessening, human can be whatever we define it as. We're lessening what I see as the best version of being human is, and we're lessening that, is what I'm trying to say.
Saying like also like lessening the human experience.
Yes. So as is standard, about halfway through this thing, I had to change some batteries and make sure that this thing keeps recording for you guys. But we were right at the tail point of, we were talking about ChatGPT.
Going down a rabbit hole.
This and that, multi-tools, right?
Yeah.
Like this and that. But you were saying that you've been really fortunate to have like a community of friends.
Yeah.
Right?
So where we were going with it too, just to summarize, basically, like I've always had this group and I've always considered them counsel.
Yeah.
And it's because one of the reasons they're counsel is they have been through experiences, know things that I don't know. I can see them going through experiences. I can learn from it.
Yeah.
Recently with ChatGPT, one thing I did just for fun was I didn't have a traditional education.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love reading.
Yeah.
And so this is something that I could have Googled and like obviously structured, but I wanted more information. And so what I did was like, can you help me create a list of books that would allow me to be considered classically well read? Okay. Easy. Okay.
Yep.
No problem. I can do that on my own.
Yeah.
Then I said, can you help me structure them in a way where I get the most out of reading each text?
Yeah.
Okay, like a logical standpoint, like when would I have read these, like in what order?
Yeah.
Did that, no problem. And I was like, obviously, if I was in a school setting, there would be work surrounding these.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and I'm not going to do a book report.
Yeah.
But can you help me formulate some, like conceptually, like what are the types of questions that what's the goal? Like, what are people trying to get from the text?
What would a workbook about this text look like?
Exactly. And can you summarize that into questions for me that I might be able to ask and think on?
Yeah.
And super fun.
Yeah.
And does it matter? No. Did it help me? Yes.
Well, and I actually, to your point, I actually think it does matter. Right?
Sure.
Especially, and I'm a biased guy because I love to read too.
Sure.
Right. And I love to learn. Right. And I think that it matters because those are the type of things that make you a better citizen. Those are the type of things that make you a better partner. Those are the things that make you right. And so, but this is the problem. Yeah. And this is the tricky. There's two sticking points, and then we'll move on to the next night. I think there are two sticking points with that model about it being ChatGPT.
Right.
Okay. I think one of those sticking points is how are we actually going to use it? And this is why I'm so immediately dismissive of this.
Sure.
Because we got the internet, and the internet was supposed to be this thing that like raised us up, and it like changed, and it did change the world. Don't get me wrong. And there are a lot of good things about the internet, but what is the internet used for? Porn and cat memes. Right. That's what the internet's used for.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. So there's one test case scenario. Then it's like social media. Oh, dude, you're going to connect with people better, and you're going to be more engaged, and you're going to know what's going on in your city, and all these beautiful things about social media, which, again, I think they delivered initially, right? Yeah. I don't think they're delivering that product anymore.
I think it's not at the forefront. I think they all still deliver on the thing they originally wanted to do, just not for everyone.
But it's not the feature. It's just a byproduct.
Yeah.
Right. And so going back to that, it's like, and then look at the black hole social media is.
Sure.
I don't need a third, right? Like I don't need a third promise of a future, beautiful technical future reality.
Yeah.
Because I know what we're going to do with it, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those like not as good or as bad as you think it will be.
Yeah.
I think that as a human, being able to ask the right questions is valuable. So
Yes.
I look at, and I mean, to be honest, like it could be hallucinating and giving me bad information. The things that I've used it for, I think that I've asked questions that are relevant.
Yeah.
And sometimes I already know the answer. I need a sounding board. I can do it with a human. I can do it with this. It gives different responses depending. And you look at, like, I think it was Oscar Wilde that said, like, any man is educated who can locate information and apply it.
Yes.
And that's sick.
Yeah.
So I look and I'm like, well, great. I had ChatGPT basically tell me to go read the Iliad, and that's fine.
Which is wonderful. Yeah.
Like,
and that brings me to the second point, which you mentioned, right? Is it might be hallucinating. And we were talking about this as we were setting up cameras, right? Is I would be a cyborg in a post-scarcity world, right?
Yeah.
I would like a Star Trek, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because that's post-scarcity.
Yeah.
Energy is basically free.
Yeah.
Food can materialize
Yeah.
in a maker, right? Nobody needs anything on Earth. That's why
Right.
we're out in the stars, right?
Right.
But I would not want to be a cyborg where there's a subscription model. I would not want to be a cyborg where my thing is owned by a company, and that's ChatGPT as well. That's any AI model. The people who programmed it, they have a goal.
Right.
They have a lean. They have an idea. They have, and that's going to influence the return you're going to get on that as well, right? And then as an imitation model, the more of the internet that becomes AI created, right? This is called dead internet theory, right? The more of the internet that is created by AI, the more it's just regurgitative.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're
stagnant. It's interesting.
You know what I mean?
It's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. So anyways, big long talk about not knives, but multi-tools.
Yeah.
But multi-tools. And it is. ChatGPT can be such a great, I really do believe that. But I also really do believe that it is beyond our ability to approach as humans in a way that it will be how you're using it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing, like for all the things that I might be using in the correct way. And I take a lot of pride, I guess, in systems that I've created the wrong way.
Okay.
I don't know if this tracks, but like I always like with tools, I'm always really happy when I can use a tool for something that it wasn't really intended to be used for. And I like that. And so, I don't know, maybe this is just like an age thing or like figuring out, it's like the systems and like the baselines of, if something comes out, I'm usually interested in it. How can I misuse it in a way, in an interesting way? And that's like not that ChatGPT relates to that, but I don't know. Asking it for a book course and a methodology was like that was my peak usage so far.
Which I think is a beautiful example of that of the peak ability.
Just information.
Right.
But that's also like for me why phones are dangerous and like because we have so much access to information that's like if you have a brain that wants it, you can't turn it off.
Yep.
Whereas like Encyclopedia Britannica was pretty rad.
Yeah, water will keep you alive and it will also drown you.
Yeah.
Right. So how much did you turn the faucet on?
Perfect. All right, cut it there. Next, where are we going?
I love it. All right. So after that beautiful rabbit hole,
yeah.
Let's move on to the next category, which I assume might have been your hardest category.
Yeah.
And that would be most important knife.
Yeah, I would say this is like maybe the category that has like the most like pockets, because like for me it's like what is important, like is it inspirationally important, is it like human connection, and I kind of like narrowed it down. I would say this knife was made by my like first mentor.
Okay.
His name was Joe Cordova. And he lived in Bosque Farms, New Mexico. I met him when I was a teenager. And I think he had the most effect on my work from a conceptual standpoint. It's like the leading by example in a weird way, where I saw the way he was working and I assumed that's how you were supposed to work.
Okay.
And in that he was an ABS mastersmith. So he did like forging, made Damascus, did all this stuff. Also did like modern tactical stuff and did like, mountain man historical stuff. And I was just like, oh man, you got to know a lot of things. And And it sent me down the rabbit hole then of like reading all of the knife books and like learning the history and learning the makers from the 60s and the 70s. And it served me really well, but it also created this spark of curiosity where I'm like, I don't have a lane to stay in. And it's really funny when I get the vibe that people are like, stay in your lane, Burnley. And I'm like, it doesn't exist.
You're like, oh, is it
Here's
knives?
the trick.
That's my lane.
Guess what? I don't have one. But this is a model that he made for years called the Gladiator. This is the baby version.
Okay.
So this is like a little version of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this was a gift from a friend. One of the things that I really like about it is we use 333 on a lot of things. It's like special family number. And the serial number on this is 3333.
Cool.
It's just a lot of threes, and I really like it. So from that like kind of special nature, like this is one of those pieces. And Joe passed away a few years ago. I don't have a lot of work from him. And so this is one of those ones where it's just like, I see the effect that this knife and extension through him kind of like had on my career.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
No, that's super special. I mean, yeah, not just because it's representative of the work that he did, but also representative of like effectively, like you said, like your first mentor. Right?
Yeah,
like,
and really the lesson was that you could do different things and like be good at them.
Yeah.
And that it was okay to do that. And especially like in knife making, especially maybe when I started, and it's weird at this point realizing that I am slipping, like I've got years in.
Yeah.
But I'm still pretty young. I just started young.
You started way young.
Right.
Yeah.
Maddie will tell me like, you sound like you're 60. And I'm like, well, I guess that tracks because I've done like a 20-year trade.
Yep.
Like you're right. Like I do sound like a lot of the old guys. In knife making, there's this concept that you have to like build your aesthetic, and it should be recognizable from across the room, and you should have your stamp, and then you stick to it. And while one of my goals has always been to create like iconic designs that are recognizable.
Yeah.
I would say like the Kwaiken is pretty easy to pick out.
Yeah.
Or also like it's so ubiquitous that it's easy if a design is similar to mistake it for the Kwaiken.
Yeah.
So like that is a good example of that concept. But I always felt like it was flawed because that would mean that I have to do the same thing or something very similar all of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you've got a lane, but you've lost the novelty.
For me.
Right? Yeah.
For me. So it's like, how can you be successful but not also just have a lane that you stay in because you made the thing that is recognizable? And at this point, like I realized like I've got design language that carries through and there's details that I just like and I'm not bored of them, and like, yes, there's things that are going to be recognizable, and that's fine.
Of course.
But this was such an example of someone who it's like, he's kind of like made what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was enough.
And made a career out of it, right?
And made a career out of it.
Yeah.
What would the next one be? Honestly, dude, we were talking about TJ.
Yeah.
I would say that this is a pretty special knife for me.
And that's Overland Sport?
This is the regular Overland.
Yeah. Okay.
And this one is special for me on like a few fronts. Specifically, like I always talk about community in our industry, and I'm like, knives are really cool, but like the community is what let it function and what make it special.
I was talking with Ben, and Ben said, you come for the knives and you stay for the people.
Yeah, that's a really easy way to say it, right? And it's true. I've known TJ since I was in Albuquerque. He probably was like 20.
Cool.
He came and filmed a video in the shop. He was designing knives, not making knives. So this knife, on one hand, it was the first product that he did where I felt like I really saw, it felt like his skills were really applied in a way that was like past design.
Okay.
I was like, you made this thing and you're doing it in your TJ way. And that makes me super happy.
Cool.
Okay. From like an industry, and I'm like a decade older than TJ. So maybe that's that thing of just like seeing him doing it and being like, damn, you're like so freaking talented, and I'm just psyched to see you doing it all for yourself kind of and your family. And then the second part of it is this knife honestly started a new learning trajectory for me because I had been trying to learn fusion and really push into learning like 3D modeling. TJ started helping me with that, started working through this. And so like through this like weird osmosis process, like I was able to learn enough and he was able to help me enough to like figure it out. And it was one of the biggest pushes in a direction that I've had for years and years and years. And that type of novelty is really rare because I think for a lot of us, we get to a point where the thing you're doing is working.
Yep.
The time you have is occupied by the thing. And so to create space to do a new thing is like very special.
Yep.
And incredibly difficult.
And it can be terrifying too.
Super terrifying.
Like not just that precipice of the unknown, right? Like at an event horizon of like, I'm going to get sucked in this black hole and I don't know what's on the other side, right? But also you have to actively sacrifice some of what you're currently doing.
Yeah. If you're already busy, right? If you're already and that is, I think it's a really good process to go through. You know, we had talked about this a little bit before we were recording, which is like, I'm really glad about some of the decisions I made when I was in like my early 20s, right? Specifically, really focusing on factory collaborations.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was really difficult because like you design a knife and you're not going to get paid for 2 years, but I've still got all this time prototyping and I'm making things and like, and then my brain is not letting it go. It's remembering that I'm doing this thing and hoping that it works. Well, you know, 13 years later, it worked out really well and I'm really glad. But in the time I was doing it, I had questions if it was a good decision and I had a lot of people question me. So if it was a good decision.
What helped you stay the course? Like maybe it wasn't one thing, but like what was
No, I think honestly it's just stubbornness and trust. Like I've had to do enough on my own over the years that I have to trust my gut. Yeah. And that's not to say I'm not ever wrong. Like I'm wrong routinely. But I know
you're not learning if you're not wrong.
Yeah. But I know when I feel a certain way about something that there's value in it. And that was one of the ones where I'm like, just can't, I see too much value in this. I also see the arguments of like why it could be an issue, but I just had to like trust that it was a good fit for me. And this is all the thing. Like you talk about clothing and you're like, you don't understand the way that someone dresses, right? Where do they live? Yeah. Like, or you're like, I love that style. Yeah. I'm going to do that fit. Yeah. And you're like, hey, you're wearing that in winter in New York and I'm in Tempe, Arizona in August. It's not like, sorry, dude. Yeah. You know, it might not work. So all of this stuff, like, I think you look at it and you're like, people's opinions are well-intentioned. It's also based off of their own experience. Yeah. And you have to be really careful where you get advice from unless you're able to filter it in a way that you're able to kind of like piece it together based on their experience, what you want, your experience. And that's kind of like, I don't know. That was that experience in the 20s. There was a lot of chatter and there was some fear. Worked out. That's how I felt at this point, kind of undertaking this new stretch of like learning and trying to like develop new skills, but also realizing like, I don't have that much time to put into this, and I'm not like technologically super savvy, but I'm interested. Yeah. So it's like I've run CNC machines for 12 plus years, but the way that I was designing was dated, and it took me. I took a financial hit at the beginning of 2024 because I was like, I have to do this now or I'm not going to do it. So we're starting to see if it'll like work out. Yeah. That knife, again, as like a talisman, it's on my workbench because, I love TJ. I love what he does as a designer, how he shows up like as a human and
Oh, yeah.
in our industry.
Great guy. Yeah.
I think he is like, my prediction around him, and I've said this before, is like, he's young enough now that I don't think a lot of the industry realizes like what that capacity and potential is.
Yeah. I've talked with people, buddies with a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Same as you, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked with people like that, higher up at some of the big knife
Yeah.
companies, right? And I'll bring up TJ's name specifically, and some of them haven't even heard of him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
Like, there's some sauce here, dude. Like, yeah.
I know. So that one's pretty important. And then I grabbed this one just purely for fun. Another gift.
Dude.
Okay, and this one, this is the reminder to just keep things fun.
Yeah.
Because this does not serve a purpose.
No. I mean, it serves a purpose.
Sure.
But it doesn't serve a purpose as a tool.
I debated bringing this out as my multi-tool. Man, yeah. Yeah, and basically the background on this is, I think the guy's name was Bob Neal. He's a maker from Kentucky,
Okay.
Monticello, Kentucky. And I think the way he made these is he would build them to the antler.
Okay.
Okay, so you'd have like a piece of stag or something, and he would cut that, and then he would form everything else to it. Wow. And somebody anecdotally told me like he would make the joke that like, oh yeah, like he sits in on your leg in the front of your pants pocket, and it's not uncomfortable.
Right.
But I think this is one of the just like lovely things about knives is that for all of their application and utility, like you can just build something that you like and is fun.
Yep. You can have fun.
You can have fun. Yeah. And that is with all of the, you're talking like capitalism, like all of the necessity to make money and to be efficient and to like make good decisions. Like I don't ever want to lose the ability to like just walk into a room, grab like a piece of steel and my bandsaw and start making something. Dude, because I want to.
Yeah. While I was setting up, like you were specifically talking about,
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, like I want to still be able to make weird stuff.
Yeah.
Like I still want to, like you said, like grab a raw material and just do
play
something.
with it.
Yeah.
Just because that to me is like the spark. And it's also like I have 2 little boys and I want to be able to include them. And absolutely, can I teach them how to do CAD and do 3D printing and do all this stuff? Yes. But I want them to make things with their hands first because it's fun.
Yeah.
Right? So we're like, it's funny because now when I look at like the longer, bigger arching business plans, what I realize is I'm structuring those to allow for that creativity and flexibility. I don't want the efficient to like eat the enjoyable.
Got you. I like that.
Right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a thread running between all 3 of these knives, right? And that's it's probably something that's naturally in you, but I'm going to push you on this a little bit because if we can figure out how to like pinpoint or share it a bit, I think it might be valuable, right? And that is your not just your ability, but your desire to learn. Right?
That's
like,
the ability.
Yeah. So like you have the spark, right? And that's an easy read, right?
Yeah.
That's like
that was easy.
Yeah, you see it on a table and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun, right?
Yeah.
Like that's seriously so cool, right?
Yeah.
I want to see more of that. It's so fun, right? But then you have these other 2, right? Like as a young man, right? One, having the drive or the vision to find somebody to help you with mentoring, right? And that's a whole thing on its own.
Huge.
Right? And then as an established maker, right? The younger guy coming up and learning from him, right?
Dude, that's
and then all of this seems to be like the linchpin to all of it seems to be like intuition. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like following that intuition of like TJ, right? Yeah. Like you were doing stuff with TJ before that, right? Like there was an intuition there, right? Like and obviously
and just a relationship and that's the thing. Like we talk about like so to Ben's comment of like come for the knife, stay for the people. It's the same thing. Like when I've worked with companies, I choose the company first. Like I choose the people in the company. Yeah. Right.
That's the same with like what I do for work. Like anybody that is like part of the channel in any monetary way. it's first the people.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
And
first
then
the
it's like, okay, cool. Now we can work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
and that's like when makers will ask about factory collab or stuff like that, like who they should go to, who they approach. It's really easy to be like, well, okay, like, you know, these guys are doing this quality or these guys pay this much. And like, the reality is it's like, who do you want to have dinner with?
Yep.
Because if you want to have dinner with the team and you want to hang out with them, like you're probably going to have a better overall experience. And that's not like a great answer, but it is.
Yeah.
That was the answer that like I wish someone had told me, but it was just always, I think I was in the industry long enough to know that like the people really matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I would say that like third part of that, like financial, like what do I consider success? Like if somebody put enough zeros behind a number in my bank account that I never had to think about it again, I would just learn. I would be a professional learner.
Yeah.
I would learn all of the things. Like, I want to go to, you know, Dirtfish Rally School real bad.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of stuff I want to learn. Like,
Yeah.
It does not end.
Yeah.
You know? And at the same time, like I feel like I've somewhat created that because I've created a business that will essentially pay for me to learn certain things in certain lines and create enough space for me to learn outside of that. To learning from people that are younger, I think that is one of the biggest missed opportunities ever.
Yeah.
And if you are like established in an industry, discounting people who are coming up later is insane because they have a completely different toolkit. And like I look at it, and this relates to me because I started when I was 19, and I've had so many situations where like people didn't want my opinion because of my age.
Yep.
You know, and like my aesthetics or something, like, oh, you have like big earrings and you're like a kid. It's like, that seems short-sighted. You flip it forward even more now, and I'm like, having kids, they're like the most fun learning tool I've ever had. But also I'm like, I'm teaching them things now that hopefully they will be able to do at a much higher level than me pretty quickly. But then I get to like enjoy that too.
Yep.
Like we were talking, like my boys are like, Winston started skiing at 2, Bo at like 4. And I'm like, they're starting to rip.
Yeah.
I'm as an adult, like I always snowboarded. I'm like, as an adult, I'm learning to ski. And I'm like, I'm learning to ski because of them. And it's rad. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's
I always tell my kid, I always tell her, I'm like, I'll know that I did the right thing as a parent when
Yeah.
you're better than me at everything that I do.
Yeah.
You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And like already like with stuff she deals with at school and stuff
Yeah.
like that, I'm just like, dude, you are like, I'm like not the worst parent because I'm
Right.
like, dude, you are leagues ahead of where I was
Yeah.
in that same exact position. You know, because
Yeah.
high school, we all go through similar things, right?
Yeah.
You're leagues ahead of where I
Yeah.
was at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It really is I didn't like, kids were never something where I was like, oh, it's a foregone conclusion that I will have kids. We had kids a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine it otherwise now. It's so cool. Super hard.
Yeah. No, it's work.
It's
work, dude. Yeah.
But it's really fun and like being able to share this stuff. So, but even that in parenting, I think that the curiosity and like the desire to learn, those are probably the strengths that maybe are offsetting some like huge weaknesses I have as a human and parenting. If it wasn't for those, I would be suffering more.
Right.
So yeah.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And it seems then this is like that drive, right, is just inborn. Like it wasn't something I mean, obviously you stoked it in that as you felt it, you did it, right?
Yeah.
Like you chased the
Yeah.
thing, right? But it wasn't something that you were like, I want to be more inquisitive in the world.
No.
Like it's just who you are.
And nobody,
Yeah.
because I didn't go to a traditional school, like, and I grew up in a household, like I grew up unschooling, right?
Yeah.
Which is like very unstructured homeschooling.
Yeah.
There were things that did not work about it for me and preconceived notions that I had about formal education
Ah, okay.
that actually affected me in a pretty like significant way for quite a while. And it wasn't until I went to Job Corps, like, that I realized like, oh wait, like I love this. And like, I think I went through in like half of the time. And I was like, why is this? Like, I've always struggled with like education. I'm like, that was really fun and easy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where the spark was, where I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's the leverage point for me.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's a great quote by Carl Jung. He was a contemporary of Freud. Not a huge fan of either of them as far as like doctrine, right? But,
Sure.
but as
you
far
have
as
to take
like,
it into account that it was in that time.
yeah,
too.
both those dudes though had really interesting ideas. And I
Yeah.
love Jung because he did a lot of work with dreams.
Right.
And that's where him and Freud split, right?
Right.
But anyways, Carl Jung says, because he's really about the hero's journey and archetypes and things like this, right? And Carl Jung says, where you find your fear is where your work is.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting
Yeah,
when you talk about
legit.
being curious,
Yeah.
right? Like, or when you talk about being able to like change your perspective on something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it's also like, you look at it, they're also tricky things with when you're growing up. So it would be a great example would be Bo, who is my oldest. He's very similar to me.
Okay.
It's difficult when someone asks you 95 questions that start ranging. And then I realized, I'm like, if he was 30 years old sitting here in the third chair, he's asking all of the same questions and engaging in the way that we are. And you're like, oh man, that's tough. Like, it's figuring out like how to interact with your world, where your tendencies lie. And like, then with kids, it's like, well, how do you like support those when they're inconvenient to support?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's your fear lie? Dude.
Dude, we go deep
Great.
here.
I notice. So I notice I'm not looking at you a lot, and that's my brain is firing, and that's what happens is after a while, like I start to like, like looking at like the conversation.
Yeah.
It's like pretty fun.
Yeah.
So
No,
if it looks like I'm not looking at him, I'm not, because it's a good conversation.
Dude, mom always said I had a face for radio. You know what I mean? So I get it, dude.
But my kid does that too, and I'm like, I'll be like, hey, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, wait, if you're not looking at me, it actually means that you're processing what I'm saying.
Yep. Exactly.
It's a trip.
Yeah. No, I know you, and that's cool. Dude, three amazing important knives. Knives. Well, so now I'm really interested to see where this next category takes us.
Okay.
Because I feel like you've had enough fixed blades on the table that we probably have a good cross section.
Yeah.
But I said like, hey, grab two fixed blades that kind of like personify your philosophy around fixed blades, right? And I really stand by like I think that if you can see with that type of framing for the question, and somebody brings out two different fixed blades, not folders, fixed blades, I feel like there's a lot you can learn about somebody. You know what I mean? In my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you're gonna prove me wrong right here. You know what I mean? But so what two did you choose? What
I think it tracks. I think I actually picked three for this too.
I love it. Hey, it's a triangulation. It's even, right? Like 2 points will get you somewhere, but triangulate, you know exactly where you're at.
I think I can actually strip it down to two though.
Oh, dude, I want to see all three.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to see them. Yeah.
Okay. This and the question here was kind of like what really stands out as fixed blades, or what was? Give it to me again.
To be honest, I can't remember exactly what I texted you. But more or less, like
signify like what?
Yeah, like what are the two fixed blades that like kind of signify like what a fixed blade should or shouldn't be or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So I think this. Okay. So this is a really good friend of mine, and he was an employee for a few years. He's awesome. His name's Joe Mangiafico.
Okay.
He is a maker who he's a really interesting like case study. When I met him, he was making knives, but he wasn't following knives. He was just making knives because he is a outdoorsman and he's creative, but he wasn't like reading Blade Mag. He wasn't like watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things when I hired him where you could see that like the cultural context wasn't there, and it's actually really cool because his work was super unique.
Yeah.
But what I always loved that he did was he would make small, really utilitarian fixed blades.
Yeah.
He would make small, really utilitarian fixed blades, and usually in like some kind of pocket sheath with a lot of like color. He was the first one. So he does these scales that basically mimic like fish skin. So he'll have like rainbow trout. And the way that he did it was super hard and like laborious. It's basically like pins inside a micarta, but he loves it. There's some like knockoffs now, but those knives, he still does them. They really, really stand out. And it's that idea. It's like the knives are super functional. They are aesthetically beautiful and they're easy to carry. And with fixed blades especially, like a fixed blade for me is, if it's utilitarian, it's only as good as its sheath. Because you have to be able to carry it.
There, especially with this trend currently with in-pocket fixed blades, EDC fixed blades. Yeah, love it. You got a great one with Boker, actually.
Yeah, actually, and that's the third. That's the third knife.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. But like you said, especially with that EDC, but even with like an outdoor fixed blade, right? It is only as good as its sheath. 100% agree. Because there's so many great knives out there that are just ruined. I will never carry because I hate the sheath.
It's not an afterthought. Yeah. It can't be.
It can't be.
And so then that's the thing. It's like he always did like little pocket clip sheaths, and I just really, really like it.
Well, and like I love the color. Like that was when you pulled that out. The thing that popped to me was the back of that sheath, right? Like just the visuals of it. Just the visuals. It goes in your pocket, but it's also something you can enjoy.
Yeah. You know? And this one's like super clean. Yeah. Doesn't have like the fish scales, but it's got it's like super thin. It's got nice jimping. It's got a cool like acid etched finish on the flats, and just like nice use of color and liners. So for me, this is like, it feels like the elevated version of like, that's what I want to carry. I want to put it in my pocket, and I carry an in pocket fixed blade pretty regularly. Yeah. And it's like I carry not this one. I have another one that he gave me that I carry, just because he gave it to me when he first started working for me, and I love it. Yeah. But this one was like a little more like refined. Yeah. In that concept, the BFF was, when I did this, I was basically doing a lot of fancy folders, and I just wanted to do like a simple knife that would be utilitarian, and this one was kind of specifically for Boker. Yeah. Because my ask was that they made it in Solingen.
Right. Because this is a Solingen.
It's basically a Barlow made in Germany. Like, because of their history, this was one of those ones where I was like, I want to, like, the knife is like, and this is a great example of like simple design. It doesn't need to be a hyper knife to like be cool. Yep. And it's thin and it works, and like, this is like, would be a good one to give to my kids. Like, same thing, and it goes in your pocket.
Dude, and the pocket, the sheath works, and it's it's really thick, like good leather as well. Yeah.
So this was I'm trying to figure out how to bring this back as a custom, because we made them as customs, but like right now, I have to really be careful with like what I'm producing, because it's just Maddie and I, and so like it's like I'm doing folders, I'm doing new stuff. And it's like some of my favorite models actually get rolled into the background. Yeah. And this is like one of those. So, but like, that's a great example of that thought process that like Joe has, where you just realize like a small, simple thing that is like aesthetically pleasing. Like, can you cut an apple with it? Like, is a really nice question, because you're like, because that's what you're going to be doing. Like, you can open a box with a key. Yeah. Like, can you just cut a slice off an apple without like crushing it or like exploding it? Right.
I like that. The Burnley litmus test. Can you cut an apple?
It's a weird one. I keep coming back to it. Yeah. But it's when you look at what knives were used for, in the 1800s or like the Sheffield era, they're all really thin. Yep. Okay. You'll notice that train of thought, the thinness, and actually I didn't realize it, but the third knife I'm going to pull out is actually, it fits that. Yeah. Can you carry it? And do you have an application for it? Yeah. I was like, it's all good.
There it is.
So third one in this is, I showed it to you earlier, actually. This was.
Oh yeah.
So being a custom knife maker, that you can like go different ways, right? Like you can make stuff that looks like it's super one-off creative. Like I grew up in an era where like a lot of the knives that I were seeing were actually productions.
Yeah.
And they were rad.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at like 70s knife making as this kind of like, a lot of it like kind of organic. There's a lot of fantasy, but like what you see, hunting inspired, like rounded forms. And then like the 80s, 90s, like becoming like really tactical.
Yeah.
So this was a knife that for me, it like kind of was like that archetype where it's double-edged. It has this like aggressive, you know, kind of like overall aesthetic, but it looked, this is going to sound weird, it looked like a product.
Okay.
It like looks refined
So
to me.
So what you're saying with this is it's a custom,
It's a custom.
but it looks like it could have been like Boker could have like somebody could have made it.
Somebody
Yeah.
gave me a compliment one time, and I really had to chew on it.
Yeah.
And they said it looks. What did they? I forget how they phrased it, but it was basically like, looks like a. They might have said it looks like a production knife,
Right.
or it looks like a store-bought knife. And it's really easy to be like, ugh, don't tell me that. But as I thought about it, I was like, no, it's because most of that person, most of the handmade things that they had seen felt really handmade and crafty.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And what they were looking at in that case did not. It felt refined. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Incidentally, I've had this conversation with Nick Rossi, who made the big chopper.
Yeah.
He's the same age as me. He grew up watching the same movies as us.
Yes.
And he went forging, but his inputs were the same way. And one of the really interesting things that he does is he'll do these like mashup, like Tonto, like tactical Tonto, but like in a forged version.
Cool.
But it looks like like a Spec War CQC6 or something.
Yes.
It's like, because he can't get those lines out of his head either.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was one of those things where I started to make product where I'm like, okay, I can do a model repeatably that like looks professional.
Right.
And like has a theme. This is a model called the Striker. And I haven't made these in a long time. This one I made for myself.
Cool.
The normal one was 3/16 of an inch thick. Okay. Because I was building these like big tacticals with like deep hollow grinds.
Well, and that was the market.
That was the market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I made mine out of 1/8 inch stock 3V.
Cool.
Because I just think what I wanted was like, yeah, I can cut an apple with that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I love that.
But also, this thing is super gnarly.
Yeah.
And it's 3V, so it's like.
Well, and the perfect steel for a thinner, right? Like, yeah.
Again, this is one of those knives where people pick it up at the table and they're like.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Take
it satisfies that it hits the triggers for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the knives.
That's great. I mean, I think what's really interesting about that is you get that, like, especially with the things that you make, but especially with like the Burnley brand image, Burnley the product brand image, right? It's like the first two feel very like refined, gentlemanly, right? Like a lot of what I feel like I see, like the brasses and the coppers and stuff, and the micartas. And the
it's like it's like heritage is overused.
Yeah.
But I do like with a lot of this stuff, it's like you're gonna find it in your grandma or grandpa's like chest drawer after they pass in the house, and you're like, a kid finds it and they don't know what it is, but they think it's cool, so they keep it. That's what I want.
Yeah, and that's definitely like the first two you brought up, and then the last one is very much the like under siege knife.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm never gonna not like the most like badass tactical aggressive knife. Like I'm never not gonna like it. Is it what I want to do as a product all the time? No.
Yeah.
Right? But it's still what I think is cool. It's still the spark. It's like that underlying. And I catch it, like I'll do a kitchen knife or something and I'm like, yeah, it's like got a little bit of attitude. I'm like, I want just like a little bit of attitude.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like an assassin's chef could use it, but also a chef could use it.
Dude, Ryback could use it. Okay? And now, I don't know, at this point, it's really interesting, like, looking past. So Burnley brand has been, like, such an interesting process for me. And when I did it, I think when I did it, it was different. I don't know how to phrase this. There was less like brand in the knife industry, except for big brands.
No, and I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think that we still see that now.
I think the industry is learning.
They're catching on, but I would agree with you on the Burnley brand. Like
Yeah.
the Burnley brand has had and has
Yeah.
a lot of brand to it
Yeah.
for the underlying product.
Yeah,
right?
and that was the thing with it was me as an individual maker trying to reach past out the borders of our immediate demand collector base industry and learn from like streetwear and learn from just a different thought process and of like about building a business. And so it's again learning.
Yeah.
Right. But now you see it more because like things will pop up and they're being built from the ground up as a brand versus being built up like as an artist.
Well, look at James Brand.
James Brand,
I think is like the typification. Typification? That's a word, right?
I don't think it is.
Pointification? What am I looking for?
I think you're gonna keep reaching for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep reaching for it.
I mean,
they're a great
exemplification. When James Brand came into the industry, they were one of the most exciting things that I saw happen, and I think partially because I think it validated some of the feelings that I had been having. But at this point, I'm like old school knife guard in a way.
Yeah.
So seeing like, oh, this is this thing that I'm trying to do in like even just conceptually, and then seeing a company who has like the skill set and a background to be able to do some of that, I loved it. And at the same time, also watching a lot of the knife industry not understand it.
Yeah.
And I was like, how are you guys not seeing this? This is super cool. They're doing something different. They're doing it. This is not necessarily for you, but it's like expanding us.
And that's the hilarious thing or not hilarious, but that's the interesting thing is I remember it was like, I think the first year James Brand was around, maybe the second, right? And they came to Blade Show. Yeah. And I remember talking to one of the owners and he said, he was like, yeah, our customer's not in these four walls at Blade Show. Yeah. And I remember at the time, like it ruffled my feathers just a little, not a lot. Like I'm a pretty chill guy, you know what I mean?
No, I get it.
But just a little bit, I was like, dude, you're making knives and you're gonna say that. Yeah. And I saw it all like just a little elitist. Yeah. But I had talked to him enough where I'm like, he didn't mean it that way.
But you're not meaning, right.
Yeah, exactly. But then now to see what they've done with it and to see where they've went with it and to see that they had a very, like when he said that, he had a plan, right? Or they had a plan, right? And I think that is what's really interesting about James Brand, right? And right, like when they first, there was like a lot of things like, oh, the materials to price, blah, blah, right? Like, but
because that's like the old knife side just speccing it. Yeah. Whereas like when you look at it from the ground up, it's storytelling. Yeah. And that is, a lot of people don't like in our industry, I think there's this hesitation to be like, the story matters. And you're like, well, it's marketing, it's hype. It's like, no, it's human nature. Yeah. Like you don't have, I get it. You cannot have a story. You can just build the product. You can do this thing, right? For me, I think the backstory does matter. You mentioned like Swiss Army. Dude, they're knife industry in like such a huge way that they're not. Yeah. Right? They're so ubiquitous that like you don't even have to know any other knife company to have one of their knives.
Well, and similar to what you said about James Brand, right? Like Swiss Army is not necessarily for the people in the four walls at Blade Show necessarily, right? Yeah. But they're the ones that are going to bring people into those four walls. Yeah. And I think that James Brand, on a completely different spectrum, right?
Totally different.
I think that James Brand is doing very similar things, right?
Yeah, similar conceptually.
Yeah, like a snowboarder or a skater or a cool guy shopping at a cool store in San Francisco or whatever sees a James Brand knife.
Or women.
Yeah,
like
or women, right?
Bringing it past just the obvious knife customer in an industry, like bringing in artists that aren't directly related, bringing in different art, bringing in different designers, bringing in different aesthetics. Yep. So I saw it when I just remember like watching it and being like, okay, like marked, like that is cool. and just seeing like the conversations that went on around it. Because everybody knows when there's a new brand. And again, right now, or for the last good amount of time with production knives, people just, they spec it.
Yep.
Like, okay, it doesn't do this. There's a few other brands, like William Henry is a great example of a brand that was, I consider it knife adjacent.
Okay, yeah.
But like they basically went beside the knife industry. Mm-hmm. They built what they wanted. They sold in jewelry shops. That's a different move.
Yeah.
The work is beautiful. So I think for makers coming in, like there's these funnels where you're like, oh, you're tactical, or like you're bladesmith, and you make slip joints. And I think that if you have the interest in like crossing the proverbial aisle, you can make it a lot more fun. Like that's what I want. That's what I'm hoping. Like the next generation, where you see like, okay, for a long time, it's like a lot of brands that come in and it's like, first it was you have the tactical stuff rolls into like mid-tech stuff. Then you have mid-tech stuff rolls into OEM stuff. And then the OEM stuff for makers rolls into OEM white label brands. And then now there's some new stuff happening that's really fun. But I think all of it gets more interesting when it starts to overlap again.
Yeah.
Because it felt like things split a little bit. And
Yeah.
there was like, there's these like fractions, and then I think soon you'll start seeing things start to like link back up, I hope.
Well, and I like the word that you used, fun, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that's something that like is not missing necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we could turn up. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's something that the knife industry could do more with.
Yeah.
Is some fun, right? Like,
and allow yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
as somebody who's enjoying the thing to have some fun as well.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're creating content, have fun. If you're a custom maker, have fun. If you're doing OEM, figure out how to have fun and not just bottom line it.
Yeah.
Or like, here's what I know, this is going to sell at a show, so I'm going to only make this thing.
Yeah.
Or this is what people are asking for, or...
Well, I just did a video where I was talking about like a couple new knives that are out there, right?
Yeah.
And towards the end of the video, I showed off a Jackwolf knife.
Yeah.
They do the really nice modern traditional stuff.
Yep.
And in all of the tins, they send a POG.
Right.
Like for playing POGs.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great.
And I talked about, I still had my POGs from the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I put them out at the end of the video and I showed them off, and like people went gaga.
Yeah.
Like go look at the comments. There are a ton of POG comments in there, and I'm like, wait a minute, dude, why aren't we doing POGs?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
this is the funny thing, like you forget, people talk about hype. So POG would be a great example of a product that was super hyped.
yeah.
But just because something crashes and goes away in the most visible sense doesn't mean that it isn't still going.
Yeah.
Like fidget spinners, like arguably there was a market that crashed around them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's also still a market.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to build fidget spinners, like just build them and build them cool and then sell them. And there's someone who wants that.
Yeah. Find your audience and sell
Find
it.
your audience, sell the thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, it's interesting. Big fan of James Brand.
Yeah. On that note of brand,
Yeah,
right? Like,
on brand.
and I mean, it's in their name.
Yeah,
right?
that's in there. Yeah, totally. And I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, in the knife space, like, yeah, I think there was a shift, and I wasn't going anywhere like super specific with that, or I don't really remember how we got on that topic, but it was, I guess, how did we get onto Burnley Brand?
Talking about branding and like the aesthetic that Burnley Brand has.
Oh, right.
With the
Okay.
tools that it
Right.
has.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. And it is. It's like trying to create. There was a point where it's trying to create separation from like me as a custom maker. Just like, what is it? What am I doing if I'm a brand? And like, they're still really related. Hopefully, I'll be able to like do more with it, split it off more, build it in the way that I think I originally had wanted to. But like, dude, life's a lot. There's like priorities. You got like kids and activities and like.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've gotten a little bit easier on myself around self-imposed goals.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy just to be like frustrated.
Yeah.
Like things take too long, or I didn't do this, or this is a failure. And I realize like I fail constantly. I don't mind that. I think I would mind more if I wasn't trying the things that I was failing at.
Well, it's like I said earlier, like I really think one of the best ways to learn is to fail. Like I wanted to learn about motorcycles,
Yeah.
and so I got on Craigslist. I found a $300,
Yeah.
old 79 CB650.
Yeah.
It never ran.
Yeah.
Right? I learned a lot on that bike,
Yeah.
right? And it took me 3 motorcycles
Yeah.
that never ran. I did what I could and I sold them off. And then a couple months later I had some more
Yeah.
money. And I took myself to motorcycle school. Now I can fix anything on a
Right.
motorcycle. But I had to fail a lot to get to that
And
point.
I think you have that, you're like a seeker. You have that same curiosity.
I think we're very similar in that, right? Like I graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA, which was like the lowest GPA you could graduate with. And what I would do is, it was low, right? And then I went to college, I got a double major, and I had a 4.0 the whole time in college.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it was self-directed.
It was a choice, right?
Yeah.
So I still was very self-educated in that
Yeah.
I was ditching school all the time.
Yeah.
I would literally go to the library.
Yeah.
My mom would, especially like first year of high school, because it was kind of when my brain switched and I was like, oh wait, this is way better to do
Yeah.
this. She used to take me in for these physicals like every 3 months, and I didn't know that was weird. You know what I mean?
Right.
Turns out she was getting me drug tested because she was convinced that I was on drugs. And I'm like, Mom, I'm ditching school and I'm going to the library. And she just couldn't believe it. Like,
It'll be interesting, man. I don't know. Like with kids, I'm so curious to see.
yeah.
I don't know. Different educational paths.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. But,
Yeah.
but it requires... there's this book that I've talked about on the channel a couple of times by Louis L'Amour, and it's called, you would actually love this book. If you like listening to audiobooks, you can get an audiobook of this too. It's called Education of a Wandering Man.
Okay.
And it's like the only real autobiography we have of his life. He turned out to be a really interesting guy.
Yeah.
Louis L'Amour was like the famous Western writer. Okay.
Yeah. How many books? Like, it's insane.
It's
right?
insane. Yeah. But also his life was insane. And you read through this, and it's kind of him talking about his self-education, because he was also self-educated, right? And it was really interesting because in the beginning of the book, he's like, I have people come up to me all the time and they're like, how do I do what you did? How do I? And he's like, the first year that you read 50 books or 100 books because you wanted to, come back and talk to me. Right? So it's not a path that works for everybody.
Yeah, you can't fake it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's a really good question in general. And it's really hard to know. So you look at knife making and you have the perceptions of what it is to be a knife maker. And then you have the realities of what it is to be a knife maker. And like for my boys, I'm not angling for them to like take over my business or become knife makers. I would love if they could build a knife.
Yeah.
But that is in no way, I look at them like, it sounds negative, but it's not. I don't think I had an option. And that's not to say that I didn't have an option of doing something else. I think it's that once I did enough of it, I caught enough of my interest where basically I wasn't going to change.
You got unintentionally and happily locked in.
Yeah, I got locked in.
Yeah.
And it happened in a period of my life where I had the flexibility to make bigger mistakes and like a lot of learning, right? Where I was building all these different things, but like I didn't have a wife and kids and mortgage at the time. And then it starts like leverage. And luckily it like worked out. But if I was looking at it now and I had like a good paying job and like, it would be a really hard, I always have like crazy respect for people who pick it up later and are like, I'm doing this thing. And I'm like, that's like, you're die hard.
Well, see, the opposite of that coin, I always have crazy respect for somebody when they're like, oh yeah, I worked here for 30 years.
Yeah,
or
same.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like at a job,
Yeah.
right? Like that they didn't own or anything. I worked here for 30 years. They provided for their family.
Yeah.
Like in my entire, because like a long line of just ramblers,
Yeah,
right? Like
figuring it out.
Yeah. Like, and so like I've always been a rambler. I'm always popping around.
Yeah.
I love to learn, and I find that getting a job in something that I'm
Yeah.
interested in is a way for me to learn it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not independently wealthy and I
Right.
can't just do what I want, you
Yeah.
know? But like I have one uncle on my mom's side, and he worked at the electric company in Mesquite, Nevada, his whole life, and like retired from there,
Yeah.
right? And literally his whole life, that's what he did, was worked at the electrical company, right? And there's something about that that's magical to me because
Yeah.
I can never see myself doing that.
There's definitely been points where I wish that I had that ability. Almost not my ability.
Yeah, not same. It's just not a strength that I have. Like I I don't think even now with the retrospect to
Yeah.
start back at 20,
Yeah.
I don't think that I could do it.
Yeah. I think at this point I could have a different career as long as long as I was learning.
Yeah.
And I was finding value in it. I played the game. I think anybody that doesn't go to school, like I didn't go to college. I did get a GED.
Yeah.
But I think there's this ability to like feel like you have a hole in your skill set or whatever. So it's like I don't have any letters. I don't have like a degree, and that's always. I think it'll probably always bother me. But I look and I'm like, okay, if I had gone to school, like where would I have gone? It's like I probably would have been interested in architecture or industrial design or like maybe therapy of some kind.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I look because I like people, but I like one-on-one and I like to learn and talk with people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I've had some super rad therapists over the years, and I'm like, or like a coach. I'm like, that's like a pretty cool. That's like pretty cool. You get to help people. You get to like learn things. And I'm like, but that's not what presented itself to me and not what I took advantage of.
Yeah.
But I think now if there was a job, like what it would be, and it would have to be like basically some type of creative director, like something.
Yeah.
Like where I basically was like a Tinker Hatfield.
Yeah.
Somehow. Where you're dude, just make 6 shoes. Yeah. And like, but you get your like, we'll fund it. You do it over here. Like that would be like, as far as jobs go, I can wrap my head around that. Other than that, it would be like I'd have to be providing for my family because I couldn't do this.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'll do anything.
Yeah. No, same, right? Like to feed my family, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
Right. Like I actually like shoveling concrete, but if I had to go back to shoveling concrete, not only would I kind of like that,
right?
It doesn't make enough money, right?
But
I would go shovel concrete for my family. If that's what it took. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Bartending or welding. That's what I got.
There you go. I mean, you could do them both. You weld all day and then go bartend. I'm sure you did a pull like that.
Man. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Well, man, I mean, skill stacking, right?
Yeah.
Being inquisitive, right? Trusting your intuition. I mean, I feel like that's how we got here, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how you
skill stacking is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that it comes through in so much of what you do as a maker, right? And it also the other thing that I think is so great about skill stacking in general, whether you're drawn to it naturally or whether you're out there and you're like, I'm not like really naturally inquisitive. Well, that's okay. Just like use this idea of skill stacking and do what you can with it. I think that it just makes you so much more well-rounded, not just as a human being, which is really important, right? But like as a maker,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it comes through in so much of your work. Like I think that's why so many people are drawn to it, because I feel like at these different iterations that you've put out there of like what is Burnley, right? Like chasing these interests, right? Like you grab these people from these other areas and then you bring them all together under the house of Burnley, right?
That's the goal, man.
And I love
like
that,
community, dude. Like I've at this point in my career, I consider myself kind of, I don't know how to like phrase it eloquently. I consider myself an ambassador for the knife industry. And this is a self-appointed thing, but I want to be a good representation of this industry because I love it so much and I know the people behind it. And like, yeah, man, it's all about community. And so what do I want to do? I want to like bring people in, they're good people, and like strengthen community and let people like learn and grow. And like, if I can do that, I feel like I could probably leave the industry feeling pretty solid, right? It's like positive effect, overall industry. That would be my goal for the next however many years I have. I don't know. It's crazy.
Well,
dude, if I go till 60, I'll have been doing this for 41 years.
See, dude, then you're my uncle.
Like, that's pretty rad.
That's pretty wild, dude.
I always think, like, I don't ever think about retirement.
Yeah.
I don't know that, like, I'm not interested in it, right?
I always say I'll work till I die.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not necessarily doing what you're doing now.
Yep.
I don't necessarily want to be doing, but like, I love this idea of like being like the granddad who's like, oh, your scout troop has like a fundraiser, like, cool, I'll build you guys some knives. Or like, oh, you're like going to do something, like, I got you. You going on a rafting trip? I'll build you a river knife. And like, it just not mattering and like just being that to me is like, that'd be a sick retirement.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Dude, this has been a ton of fun.
Super fun.
Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah.
Right, this is why I called you up. Like, anytime we get together, I feel like we just had the best conversation.
This is actually probably the longest time you and I have sat and actually had a conversation.
Yes.
And it's weird because it's on camera,
Yeah.
but it's also been really fun.
Yeah.
And it's also as natural as not having it on camera.
I'm glad you were able to forget about the camera, right? That's a big part of it, right? So it's been a blast. It's been a blast. I don't know, man. Like, you've got 20 years in the industry, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of we've got to see a bunch of rad retrospective here,
Yeah.
which was really fun to get
Yeah.
into. I think there's some stuff here that for people to learn from for sure. Like, what do you have any advice or any idea on how somebody could get more curious, or how somebody could start stacking skills?
I think the key, if out of the gate you realize that it's not your strength, and you want maybe it not to be your primary strength, but you want to like bolster it a little bit. Like, I think figuring out how to tie it into another goal or another skill set. So like in my case, curiosity, it has to be like the base level for anything else that I'm doing, but it allows me to connect to something that I wouldn't otherwise have interest in. I just have to maybe reframe it and be like, well, okay, what am I curious about this? Or like, where is like, how can I do this where there's like a reward at the end, right? So I'm not good at CAD. I want to learn CAD. How can I be curious, and how can I give myself like, you know, a dopamine reward basically? Okay, I'm going to buy a cool 3D printer. The only way for me to print something on my 3D printer is to design something solid. Okay, so it's basically just like hacking either your abilities or your tendencies. It doesn't even have to be a strength. It's like, do you have a weakness that drives a lot of decisions? Figure out how to leverage that for a positive.
Right.
I spend a lot of time just figuring out like how to do something that isn't in my wheelhouse.
Love it.
I mean, I don't know if that answered the question, but
I think it's there.
there's always a way. That's the thing. There's always a way.
There is always a way. Yeah.
We talked about, you know, everyday carry stuff for multi-tools. Like, you're the multi-tool.
Yep.
Right? So if you're going to problem solve, you're going to be the thing that's solving the problem regardless of the tool. It's like, if you don't have the pry bar, you're going to probably use something else. If you really, really need it, you're going to figure it out. So if you really, really need a skill, or you feel like you need to be more curious, guaranteed you're curious about something. Just figure that out, start there, and then build a process. TJ says, what does TJ say?
The process is the product.
Oh, you knew it. It's funny that you knew the quote. The process is the product. So just create a process, I think.
Cool. That's wonderful.
You want to go have a burger?
Dude, we need to go get a burger.
Oh,
So we're going to take you guys to show you the burger. I'll try to do a little bit better than TJ. I always get self-conscious, right? Like, influencers in the wild. Like, I don't like filming.
This makes two of us.
Oh man, I hate that, and I don't want to interrupt people. So we'll figure it out. We're gonna take you guys to a burger. What was it? Burnley's best burger in Bend.
Yeah.
Thank
We're
you
going
guys.
to Blue Eyes.
We're going to Blue Eyes. Apparently, I don't even know what that is. Excited, guys. Thank you so much for following along. And dude, let's go get a burger.
Dude, thanks, guys. This is one of my favorite brand shirts right here.
Here we are. Blue Eyes Burgers, right? All right.
You guys are surprised.
There we are.
All right, so we like to talk a lot, and you can see Burnley's almost done. But you know, pretty good burger. We got the house special, right? Yeah, pretty good burger. So yeah. Anyways, thanks for checking it out, guys.